do things. Weeks ago, if not months, we were all notified by the state attorney that Mr. Nixon was refusing to take the stand. Last week or the week before, I entered an order compelling him to be present before the court for me to determine whether or not he was unavailable in accordance with the terms of certain statute and rules on witnesses and their production. So far as I know, the only reason they brought him here was my order. There were no subpoenas. Mr. Nixon appeared last Thursday morning and was placed under oath. The defense almost immediately objected that I had no right to do so because there was no scenario in which I could interview him, that he was a convict, and essentially that he had no rights. And that he was under sentence. So Mr. Nixon came in, was placed under oath, and apparently changed what he had told the state. From I will not testify to I will testify. He was returned to the holding area, and we proceeded with the trial. He came back early afternoon, I don't remember exactly when, but after a lunch break. Mr. Nixon was called to the stand. At the sidebar over here, I asked Mr. Johnson and Mr. Mizrahi to come up. I didn't ask anybody else because I'm just concerned with the number of people over here at the sidebar, and it was a simple question. And my question was if I needed to talk to Mr. Nixon about the probability of him giving conflicting statements. Mr. Mizrahi said he had been briefly touched on that in the back. Mr. Johnson did not answer my question. He simply said we needed to talk about the number of prior felony convictions, which Mr. Mizrahi told him the number. Mr. Nixon, again under oath, took the stand, testified to some parts of his participation in these homicides, and very quickly into the direct examination began to tell the jury and myself and everyone here in the courtroom that he had lied all the other times and that he had been told to do that, and the words had been put in his mouth by his lawyer at the time. Mr. Mizrahi appropriately asked for a break, which I was about to do anyway. My concern, twofold, was that Mr. Nixon was about to commit perjury and expose himself to a possible death penalty in the event that his plea agreement was set aside, and he could be sentenced to death or life. I was also concerned for Mr. Wade that what Mr. Nixon was going to say in front of the jury might in some way be backwashed on Mr. Wade, even if his attorneys called Mr. Nixon as a witness. Now, of course, the jury left the courtroom. During the conversation I had with Mr. Nixon on the stand, to which the defense objected, I could not say that I believe that Mr. Nixon understood what he was doing and that he was in need of someone other than myself or anybody in this courtroom to tell him what he was exposing himself to, and that he still had the right to testify if he wanted to. The defense, at some point, I will assume that they were talking simply about the system and not about me, suggested that there was some manipulation of the evidence going on and that he should be forced to come in and tell his story to the jury because he had already started to tell it. And I, of course, said that's not going to happen. There was a 10-minute break that I declared because I needed time to calm down. And during the course of that, it occurred to me that I really did need to find someone who was capable with the experience to talk to Mr. Nixon in private as counsel. Mr. Donald Mayer's name came up. I do not recall whether I suggested it or I think perhaps Ms. Abel may have suggested him. In any event, the consensus is that Mr. Mayers, who is well known to the court and counsel in this proceeding as a competent, skilled person, an expert in defense of capital cases, would be an appropriate appointment. One, because of his professional expertise, and two, because he had not had any connection with this case or these defendants in any way during the course of the matter. We took counsel, all participating in this, all agreed that Mr. Maris was an appropriate choice. We took a recess until Monday. I immediately called Mr. Maris, who graciously accepted the appointment. I will tell you that I do not, to this moment, even though Mr. Maris is in here today, I have studiously not asked him what the process is. I will wait for him to tell me and you at the same time as to what Mr. Nixon is. So at this point, I have no clue as to what Mr. Maris and Mr. Nixon talked about. I am compelled to put on the record, and I do this simply because I'm putting it on the record, that after we left, unbeknownst to me, and I'm not saying that there was an obligation, I'm just saying after we left, I learned that one or more members of the defense team, in private, after he had been brought here by a court order, after he had been placed under oath, someone went back and talked to Mr. Nixon without notice to the state, without the presence of the state. And as I said, I did not learn that until we had left that afternoon. So, that said.
That is not true. Your last assertion is factually untrue. No one talked to Bruce Nixon after that whole thing that happened. Did not happen. I spoke to Bruce Nixon before he ever got on the stand. Alan Mizrahi and I walked back there together. Alan Mizrahi told him he is subject to the death penalty.
Then if that is be the case, Mr. Johnson, I stand corrected. As I said, I was only putting it on the record because staff had told me that that's what had happened. Now is not the time to discuss it.
I just want to finish what I'm saying because I want to set that story. After Mr. Mizrahi and I spoke with Mr. Nixon, I then walked back there for maybe 15 seconds, which I have a right to do. He was my listed witness. That is when I walked back there. It was very brief, and that's what happened. No one talked to him after any of that.
Mr. Johnson, as I have said, I only put it on the record because, if nothing else, the appearance of I have no idea what transpired. I do not want to know. It's just that the appearance is such that you were back there without the state. And I will leave it at that. I have made no aspersions. I'm simply putting it on the record that that's what I was told for what it's worth in the future. End of conversation. Mr. Maris, and by the way, Mr. Nixon is in the back. Would you like him to come out now, or would you?
I think we can deal with the issue of whether he can testify
without him present.
Well, I think I would like him here.
Okay, he is here. All right. That I will, as I indicated to you when we first talked, I'm more than happy to sign whatever documentation that you think was appropriate. I had not, go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Possibility
Mr. Nixon, you remind you were still under oath. Did you have enough time to talk to Mr. Maris about that?
Yes, sir.
Is that in fact your decision?
Yes, sir.
Have you had enough time to consider everything that Mr. Maris told you?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Nixon, you may step in the back. Thank you for your time, Mr. Maris.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Mizrahi and/or Mr. Johnson.
Yes, sir. Pursuant to this invitation, state's request is that the court will instruct the jury to disregard testimony of Mr. Nixon in this matter as he has given the right to remain silent. Pursuant to his unavailability, the state intends to reveal his prior perpetuated testimony, defense, in addition to trial testimony, which the state intends to defense wanted to introduce felony-based testimony of Mr. Nixon, the redirect of Mr. Nixon in the Michael Jackson case, and the 3851 testimony of Mr. Nixon, not the
Mr. Johnson, I'm not sure that I'm prepared to tell this jury to disregard what they saw on Thursday, particularly if Mr. Mizrahi is going to continue with the transcripts from the...
Yes, sir. I would agree with that. We would strenuously object to the court advising them to disregard what they saw on the stand. I also have a number of objections which we are reducing to writing regarding the admissibility of the prior testimony of Mr. Jackson. I'm not prepared to...
Tell me briefly what those would be.
Well, there are a couple issues here. First of all, Mr. Mizrahi rested. He said, then I have no more questions. It would be on the cross. That was it. Another issue is this. Mr. Mizrahi does not get to decide what version he believes is true. If we have an ethical rule that bars us from presenting testimony, perjured testimony to the court, we cannot do that. It is just as if I had a client that said, I'm going to lie up there. I don't get to say, well, I don't think you're lying. You go up there. What we have is Bruce Nixon standing up and saying, I perjured my last testimony. Mr. Mizrahi wasn't present when all this happened, and no one else was. The declarant himself said that testimony is perjured testimony. And so by offering it, it is just as if I offered my client up there who said, I'm about to go lie, and said, no, I don't think he's lying, and putting him up there. It is in fact perjured testimony because the declarant says it's perjured. That is his last statement, and that's where it's been left. That is a standalone issue. I believe it's, we can't put it up there for that reason. Additionally, we have Florida Statute 90.804, which addresses when a witness is unavailable for purposes of hearsay at a trial. And among them, indeed, is the taking of the Fifth Amendment. However, there is also a rule that, and it's 90.804(1)(e), that the declarant is not unavailable under the statute if the exemption, refusal, claim of lack of memory, inability to be present, or absence is due to the procurement or wrongdoing, and I'm not accusing wrongdoing, but I am alleging procurement of the party who is the proponent of his or her statement in preventing the witness from attending or testifying. I would cite Morby State, 102, Florida 1135, 1931 case, and it says a prosecuting attorney should not intimidate witnesses by threatening to have them arrested for perjury if they do not tell the truth. Gordon v. State, 104 Southern 2nd, 524, Supreme Court of Florida, 1958, finding that the sworn oath by the witness is enough to put him on notice of perjury, and the state need not advise the witness of the risks for perjury. In the instant matter, the unavailability was clearly the procurement of the state. Bruce Nixon got up on the stand, and the part that bothered me the most is in a capital murder trial where the state is seeking to have this man executed. The main witness stood up on the witness stand and said, I want to Mizrahi jumped up, threatened him with execution if he went on. And I would say that it is a dark day in an American courtroom when a man tries to correct his prior testimony and is shut down with the threat of execution, carted off, given a lawyer, and takes it, and here we are today. And now they want to put in his prior testimony, and there is something inherently wrong. I object under the 6th, 8th, 14th Amendment to the Constitution, and I don't believe this court should let it in.
I find that Mr. Nixon is unavailable because he has exercised his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. I will also instruct the jury that they do not get to talk or consider the testimony. Mr. Mizrahi, if you will prepare a proposed instruction for me to give the jury at the appropriate time.
Yes, sir. One of the instructions that was given, this is just about his availability, I'll have to include the testimony. It says, and this is from favorably state reading, it says that the court said that the counsel requested jury instruction stating the witness was not available to prove his and that the jury should draw no inference from his absence. Such an instruction would be fine.
I will do that.
I'm not going to spend all that time responding to what I just heard, other than to say that the only one in this courtroom that knew what was going to happen was this man. He knew dang well what was going to happen. And
You're talking about Mr. Johnson or Mr.?
I'm talking about Mr. Johnson. I'm tired of being accused of things. They disclosed a letter that Mr. Nixon wrote free to game in 2008 election. They listed it on the discovery, yet they had never provided it. I had a thumb drive full of discovery, but I never received that letter, which I received on Friday. The other thing that's very interesting is that 15-minute conversation with Mr. Johnson, Mr. Nixon in the back, that he never told anyone about, which I agree is his right. When the court brings Mr. Johnson up to the bench and asks both of us if there's any reason to believe that a man is about to commit perjury, and he knows our prior conversation, Mr. Nixon did not indicate he was doing it. I have no idea what went on there in the back. To sit here and be accused of things like this is, it's very disturbing to me, especially when the only people in the world that knew what was going to happen was the defense, and they let it happen. They've disclosed all this before. And they chose not to.
I would only find that I have an absolute right to discuss a witness. He was a listed defense witness. In fact, there's a jury instruction that said there is nothing improper. Now, if he's accusing me of something improper, I would like him to do it explicitly.
I'll do it.
Okay.
If I may,
What
is improper is when the court asks lawyers and officers of the court if there's anything to worry about a witness, and those officers of the court do not disclose what they know is going to happen, I have a problem. Is that explicit enough?
Alan Mizrahi looked at him and said, "You plan on testifying?" "Yes." "What are you going to do?" "Tell the truth." And that's what he got up and did. And nothing unethical happened between myself and Bruce Nixon, and no one else and Bruce Nixon. And I take great offense at the allegation that anything less than above board happened with him.
As I have said, I declare Mr. Nixon unavailable as a witness because he has exercised his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. I will hear no further pointing fingers between the two of you. I don't know what happened, but it needs to be part of the record. And I will also point out, unless I am completely wrong, I have received from Ms. Miller a written motion to prohibit the introduction of Mr. Nixon's prior testimony, which I've already read up here on the bench, believe it or not. Sorry?
I have a different motion for Your Honor, I just want to correct.
Different.
Yes, sir, this reduces in writing what Mr. Johnson just articulated. I wanted to correct on the record that the court had represented that the direct examination of Mr. Nixon was brief, and that's where we took the time to count it.
I said it was brief. It was brief and compared to what I had heard before, Ms. Miller,
Understood.
which was hours of,
Totally understood.
you know.
But Mr. Mizrahi did have the opportunity to ask Mr. Nixon over 40 questions.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Mizrahi, at the conclusion of the interchange, indicated that he had no more questions for the witness, which our position would be it's time for cross. we have no cross, and therefore his testimony is complete. Therefore, there need be no readback of prior trial testimony. Mr. Nixon is finished. I have a different motion in limiting for your honor than the one that is filed. Given the exchange, the defendant is moving and limiting to preclude the state from introducing evidence that Mr. Johnson spoke with Mr. Nixon for approximately 15 seconds, correct? Not 15 minutes.
I am sure that Mr. Mizrahi has no intention of making reference to that.
Just want to make sure, given the interchange, that obviously there's nothing improper about it.
I started this out by telling you there were things that I think needed to be put on the record. I take no personal side one way or the other. I'm not saying that for a moment, Blake. And I know Mr. Mizrahi is not going to do that because, of course, there are circumstances in which everybody has a chance to talk to a witness who has been brought in. All right. Mr. Wade was represented by counsel at the last trial, and he had full access to cross-examination of Mr. Nixon at the last trial. That's all that's necessary. So I am not going to prohibit the state from using the prior testimony of Mr. Nixon. That said, I don't know, certainly the defense has the right to whatever cross there is or whatever other consistent or inconsistent statements that Mr. Nixon may have made. I'm open for suggestions on that, Mr. Johnson.
Well, Judge, I believe that this court is ruling that prior testimony comes in, then the testimony, the sworn testimony that occurred after the jury was brought out of the courtroom, his words, words to the effect that I lied before, it was because I was coached, I committed perjury previously, I want to tell the truth now. Clearly that is admissible if the read-in comes in.
I have decided that it is not. He exercised his Fifth Amendment right, and under the circumstances of this whole thing, I am not going to let this jury hear about that. You can add whatever arguments you may want to about the trial transcript, but I am going to instruct the jury that they are not to consider anything that Mr. Nixon said on Thursday.
If we would request proper testimony, we have it in writing, we'll make it part of the record. Bruce Nixon's testimony, I mean, it's already part of the record.
Already part of the record. What are you talking about? It's right here.
And Judge, specifically, one, the statement should be admissible because they are statements against his penal interest, clearly.
I have ruled, Mr. Johnson.
Judge, I would just like to have my objection fully.
You objected. I don't need to hear what your grounds are or the law. I understand what you're saying. You don't want him.
You articulate the grounds for certain, Judge. It's a statement against his penal interest.
It is.
Two, it clearly goes to his credibility. Three, it is a prior inconsistent statement, prior being that it was made before the statements are published. The evidence code does not contemplate a future inconsistent statement because that would be impossible. It's prior to the statements being proper for fully in front of the jury.
I understand. Nevertheless, that is my rule.
And I have one question.
I may not answer it, but you can ask.
The court's prior ruling, I was confused by when the court ruled that the jury is not going to be told to disregard his prior testimony.
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
The court ruled
What I've just said.
at first that
I changed my mind. After having heard your argument and being concerned about, I changed my mind. All of that said, now, Mr. Mizrahi, we remain in the state's case as far as I'm concerned. Who will be or what will be the next step?
The next step will be Mr. Kalinowski, who's graciously agreed to Nixon's testimony, as I indicated previously, we will be doing not only his testimony in the trial, so counsel's request, defense counsel's request, we'll be doing the penalty phase and the 851 pursuant to that.
By Mr. Nixon.
Mr. Nixon.
Okay. There is one housekeeping matter, counsel, I forgot before you like,
Judge, we talked about the 3851. I'm not sure about the penalty phase, Rita. I just need
guys,
a
I
minute.
will have to trust whatever, that's not what I want to talk to you about.
Okay.
The last thing that we talked about on Thursday was Ms. Campbell, I think her name is Campbell, the juror.
Yes, sir.
We would need to strike her.
Our request is the same. Generally, I would not have an objection. She's in the ultimate case of the trial. It's prudent to keep her on. With the instructions that she not discuss the case, obviously, given, and we can make sure we have an insurance at that point. I can show you what all my objections and the ultimate. There's been no evidence to show that she's not.
Well, my concern, I'm not, this is what I would suggest. I'm not prepared to strike her at this point without knowing more. I mean, there was not enough questions at all. I have told you that I have been told that it's likely that Ms. Campbell knows nothing of Judge Carbula's participation as an assistant attorney general in this case. That came from Judge Carbula. I am willing to bring Mrs. Campbell, or, it is Campbell, isn't it? Yeah. I'm willing to bring her out and ask her if what she may or might not know about, whether or not she even knew that Judge Carbula was involved in this. And if she said yes, fine. And if not, will that in any way affect her participation in the trial? I don't think I can just summarily excuse her because of what, the information we received was. I will agree that bringing her out and asking her about that question may, point out.
How did Judge Carbula know she was a juror in this case?
I don't know. I just know that the general counsel came, actually she came the day before and said, and she came in and she said, I don't remember what she said, but apparently Judge Carbula had sent word to her that she had seen the list or something like that, and that so-and-so was in the jury panel. Well, but let me finish. But and I looked at the name. That name was not here. She was not part of the panel. Right. So I didn't ask any further questions. Then Thursday, General Counsel Burke comes back in, Court Counsel Burke comes back in and says, well, it turns out that she changed her name. I do not know whether it was divorce or marriage or what, but I looked, and in fact, there is a Mrs. Campbell in our box.
Correct. My concern is obviously I wish that had been brought to our attention prior to selecting the jury, but the court had that information.
I shared with you exactly what I had.
I know, but we didn't know that until after the jury was already seated and sworn.
Neither did I.
No, I believe the staff attorney came in prior to us.
You did not. I did not know that Ms. Campbell was Judge Carbula's person until the jury had already been sworn.
So my concern is,
This was Thursday afternoon.
okay, so my concern is, of course, that Judge Carbula knew somehow, right, that this person who she's friends with enough so to bring it to your Honor's attention is on this jury, which I don't know if that was.
Ms. Wilson, for all I, Ms. Miller, for all I know, Judge Carbula did the jury qualification. I don't know. I will be glad to ask.
Well, then that's even more, so here's my concern, right, is that Ms. Campbell may not have drawn any connection between Ms. Carbula and this case.
Mhm.
We then asked Ms. Campbell about her relationship.
Okay, that's fine.
We then asked Ms. Campbell, so right, Ms. Campbell may not have drawn any connection between her relationship with Ms. Carbula and this case. If we asked Ms. Campbell, we are now suggesting.
Yes, I agree. I understand.
So, I mean, I'm certainly going to accept the court's offer to speak with Ms. Campbell, but I think the more appropriate, or safest remedy would be to strike her. I have no objection to Mr. Mizrahi's suggestion that perhaps we should substitute Ms. Campbell for an alternate, and the first alternate, Mr. Barber.
You guys get together on this, please.
I think the state and defense are in agreement on this. I mean, Mr. Mizrahi, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was my understanding that we were.
We discussed that Thursday,
Okay.
and the parting comment from the court is, this is what we're going to do about this. Nothing. And that's what we did. Speaking of court counsel, who just walked in the back,
I'm sure she's thrilled about the,
I did not bring her. She's just here. No.
You don't have to question Ms. Campbell without suggesting that Ms. Carpullo was involved in this case at one point as an assistant attorney general. Obviously, Ms. Carpullo's role would have been in trying to uphold the death sentence on this case. If they're friends to the extent that Ms. Carpullo had a need to bring it to your Honor's attention, certainly this juror would know what her friend did for a living. And so then there's a whole host of issues.
I don't know that. I know that when this happened 20 years ago, or whatever it was, 15, Judge Carbula lived in Tallahassee. She did not live in Jacksonville. She was an assistant attorney general. This case may have been my first exposure to her. Since that time, she moved to Jacksonville, became a county judge and then a circuit judge, and now she's sitting on it. Actually, she came in to work with the state attorney's office here in Jacksonville, and then went on to the bench. So it's certainly possible.
She was the assistant attorney general of the prosecutor.
Yes.
And so would have been seeking to uphold the death sentence.
Yes, I
And so
know.
obviously we agree that a juror is not entitled to know that Mr. Wade was previously sentenced to die. We now have a woman on our jury who has a relationship with a prosecutor who's seeking to uphold a prior death sentence. And certainly she would know.
That nobody knew about. You all asked about participation in trials, the law, the system. It never came up. There was nobody, no one ever asked, do you know any circuit judges? Do you know anybody that is criminal prosecutor? None of that came up. It came up just because, I will tell you that I have seen friends' names on jury. We frequently get the list of jurors, and I have shared with other judges, people that I thought may be on the list. I just need to know what's appropriate under the circumstances. This is Monday. Mr. Johnson, I expect you're going to go through to Wednesday anyway. That was the plan, was it not? This was on this. Well, I'm just saying, and if Ms. Campbell is released, that still gives us one alternate.
That's what we're just asking to make a ruling that she be substituted as an alternate juror to Barbara serve on the jury. Yeah, I'm not suggesting anything untoward happened, but it's at this point.
All right, how about this? How about this? I think we talked about this, and this may be what you're talking about. Amongst us, Ms. Campbell becomes alternate 2.
Yes, we agree.
And if it gets to the point, then we ask her about the problem.
Totally agree.
And so that would mean that whoever was number alternate 1 now becomes part of the panel. That's what is Barbara. Okay. Does that work for you, Mr. Ron?
Works, Your Honor.
All right, so Ms. Campbell is now alternate 2.
Thanks, sir.
All right.
Your Honor, just for the record, we did make, I know you already ruled this, Your Honor, we're reducing it in writing. We did make 2 motions for Your Honor to disqualify himself on this, and they were denied, so we're reducing that in writing, Your Honor. And also, I will renew that motion based on the fact that, Your Honor, your statement was, you believe, would be commenting on those motions. It's not allowed by the rule, Your Honor.
What?
You said you commented on our motion for you to recuse yourself because you interjected yourself in the proceedings. You made a statement commenting on that, Your Honor, basically. So that's basically, I would argue, Your Honor, that's you commenting on our motion.
You made the objection that I was interjecting myself.
That's correct, Your Honor. I moved to disqualify.
And I overruled it.
There wasn't an objection, Your Honor, to the motion to disqualify you. So my argument, just for the record, Your Honor, I understand, is basically that you commenting on the motion to disqualify.
All right, well, the record will speak for itself. The motion is denied. Mr. Mizrahi.
Your Honor, Mr. Cooper's preparing an instruction. Reads the record, emailing it to all the parties now. Instruction. The state is requesting, Your Honor, reads Bruce Nixon is not available to either side as a witness, and the jury should draw no inference from his absence. The jury should also disregard Bruce Nixon's limited testimony that took place on Thursday, July 9, 2000. June 9th, 2001.
And I understand there's an objection.
Objective, and the court's overruling that objection, I think that the language needs to be, because he's asserting his new punishment of the
Not going to do it. Would you send a copy to the clerk so that she can print it up, please? And I will, actually, I think I will do that before.
We were asking for that the state has read an instruction that says he's unavailable, and so to me, it lends itself to, did he die, did something happen to him? And so really what's most proper and most informative and not misleading would be to say Mr. Nixon is now unavailable because he's asserted his right against self-incrimination.
I'm not going to do that, Ms. Miller.
So we're just going to let the jury
Tell him, he is, I have declared, I don't care what, I'm just not going to say that he's asserted his Fifth Amendment rights, because the jury's not going to say, I don't want them going off. Well, what did that mean? What did he, is he about to be crushed? Ain't going to happen. That's not for that jury to decide. I will be happy to say that I have declared him unavailable, or that I've forbidden the I don't,
They get to decide if he's a credible witness, and so they're
no,
going
they
to.
don't.
Yes, that's 100% of the foray of the fact finder.
Based on the testimony that they're going to hear.
Right, but they're being told he's unavailable. It's not because
What
he's
would you
not.
like me to, I'm not going to tell them that he exercised the constitutional right. It's not going to happen. What else would you like me to tell them?
I think what
Standard instruction simply says he's unavailable.
that's not the standard instruction.
The instruction, we took it apart from the case laws that came before our favor. And I think it's, although the state would have no problem if the court said, I have declared him unavailable to do that.
That puts me in an, I'm not going to do that either.
Yeah, I think it's better to just say he's unavailable and not to draw any inference from it. So I think it's fine.
To be clear, that's not a standard instruction.
Okay, that's fine, I understand. All right, if you'll send that to my clerk for printing, and I will read that to the jury, I think when, that was the last thing that happened to them.
The first thing Your Honor should do is read that instruction and say, so Your Honor, this time we would be entering in Mr. Nixon's perpetual testimony. I'll wait to hear from the defense about whether or not they want penalty for this testimony. I think it's best if we do 3851, which probably
I need just.
I'm sorry, I'm
There
not,
were, I'm sorry, there were three different testimonies. There's one that Mr. Kalinowski is not, which is the redirect of Mr. Nixon Jackson, which the state was agreeing to.
Mr. Smith, do you need me?
Yes, sir.
Please have another brief.
I'm sorry?
I have another brief matter.
Okay.
Motion to eliminate. That I briefly discussed with the state and leverage, and it deals with, so several days ago, we happened to see while Mr. Rodney was flipping through his PowerPoint, it was displayed on all our screens, it was a picture of Mr. William and a female and a small child. We are moving in liberty to prohibit the state from making unproven allegations that Mr. Wade somehow fathered a child from death row. They are salacious internet.
Didn't we argue this already, Frank? I thought what I said is that it's not coming in until Mr. Mizrahi can establish that it's relevant.
That's correct, Your Honor. That's what I'm agreeing with. It's not for the jury. I will call
I don't disagree, Mr. Johnson.
And Judge, and I would only just add to that, that I would assert that there is no way that it could become relevant because it is an unproven allegation. And there is no proof anywhere.
Mr. Johnson, in the same continuing conversation, I have told you that I believe it is Mr. Wade's right to allocute to the jury. We will talk about how that happens later. I agree. But I also understand Mr. Mizrahi's that depending on what Mr. Wade says or doesn't say, I'm not committing to this, but I'm probably not going to let it in. It's going to take a fairly high burden for Mr. Mizrahi for me to let that sort of thing in this circumstance, because right now, it just,
And then additionally, I can advise the court that you will be calling a witness that will talk about Mr. Wade's prison behavior, good behavior, lack of disciplinary report.
I understand.
There is not a disciplinary report that has anything to do with any of what we're talking about today. And I think I would ask the court for a rule, that's what he intends below it, where he expressed that verbally. Nothing in any of these disciplinary records that would even suggest that he did anything of the sort. I would just ask the court to consider that.
I did. You told me the same thing last week, Blake. I agree. Yes, you're right.
Additionally, Judge, I have.
Mizrahi, do you understand that you will not mention anything about that until I have said you can?
Absolutely. I have one additional motion in limine. It is similar. It deals with Mr. Wade's marriage. It is not relevant. It is a statutory aggravator. Inmate has a constitutional right to marry, and we believe that Mr. Mizrahi will try to bring this up in his effort to present a non-statutory aggravator. It's similar to the argument regarding a child who said that there's just no relevance in this. I know that the state intends to bring it up. It's not bad behavior. It doesn't cut against the good prison behavior, and there's just no relevance in this proceeding.
Saying that. I'm not going to use either one of those factors until I have, one, I believe the door has been opened, and I believe the door has been opened, I will offer the evidence outside of this.
All right, that's fair. Did you resolve the matter of,
I think we need a few minutes for them to give.
well, the jury's not even here yet. They're not,
We still have a few
yeah, they're not, what I was going to say is, have you resolved the matter of whatever transcripts are going to be read, anything like that? You're talking about, okay.
I'm just waiting here.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the court.
I'm just asking if you had resolved the matter of whatever transcripts are going to be used. We don't have a jury here yet, Mr. Johnson.
I'm gonna need a minute.
My clerk has indicated that there are some exhibits that we may need to discuss marking. You want to do that now or just later on?
I've already provided them to the clerk, and the state has stipulated to the court.
Oh, okay, so we don't need to do that on it.
Okay, sorry, that's the taken care of.
Judge, I think we ironed it out.
I'm sorry?
We ironed it out.
Okay. Then, since we don't have, by the way, apparently we did correct the plumbing problem. I say we. So the jury will be using, I guess, this room over here. All right, are there any other administrative matters that we, need to discuss before the jury gets here? Because if not, I propose to take a short recess.
We need a short recess.
Can I just need a moment? I believe Mr. Cooper, Mr. Mizrahi said Mr. Johnson the proposed instruction. Mr. Mizrahi's kind of providing me a case. So I just need a moment for you all that.
Well, that's fine. I mean, the jury's going to be in the jury room when we resume anyway, so we can address it when we get back. Okay. We'll be in a recess until we have a jury.
Sorry, everyone's okay. Be allowed to. You're not on Instagram, tweet. Alright, so, once we're done with Bruce's stuff, then we'll be able to. Once you're done, I'll say, thank you. Sumner, and then we'll get
All right, we are in the courtroom. Mr. Wade is present. I understand we have all of our juries in the jury room. Are we ready to proceed? Ms. Miller, you had, I'm sorry.
Obviously, we're disagreeing, or we're continuously objecting to construction, and we're asking to be told the nature of the unavailability. But
Okay.
given the court's ruling, the only objection I have is to the word limited. So the instruction reads, Bruce Nixon is not available to either side as a witness, and the jury should draw no inference from his absence, which I would agree is supported by the favor case, if the court's given the instruction over our objection. The second sentence is the jury should also disregard Bruce Nixon's limited testimony that took place on Thursday, June 9th, 2022. Again, that is a characterization of the statements made, the defense would vehemently disagree with.
So you're suggesting I simply drop the word limited?
Yes, if, again, we're objecting to the
I understand.
instruction in its entirety.
I understand.
and
All
asking
right. I have no problems with that. It is only limited in my mind because I know, well, as I pointed out before, the length of others. Are we otherwise ready to proceed then, Mr. Mizrahi? Mr. Johnson?
Yes, sir.
All right, if you'll have the jury join us, please.
Jurors again in the courtroom.
All right, our jury is returned. Please seated, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. We remain in the state's case. I have a preliminary matter that I want to address with you before Mr. Mizrahi proceeds. And I will point out to you that Mr. Nixon, that was the last witness that you heard on Thursday, is not available to either side as a witness, and you should draw no inference at all from his absence. You should also disregard Mr. Nixon's testimony that took place Thursday afternoon. Okay? Mr. Mizrahi.
Now, this time, the state would be introducing Mr. Nixon's prior testimony in this matter. Have Mr. Kalinowski from our office.
Mr. Kalinowski, if you'd come up and take the stand, please. Ladies and gentlemen, this will be pretty much as we did last week with the one witness. This is testimony from a prior proceeding. Mr. Mizrahi will ask the questions on direct, and Mr. Kalinowski will answer, and one of defense counsel will pose cross-examination questions from the same transcript. Mr. Mizrahi.
And may it please the court. Just making sure the witness is ready. You ready? Very
Yes,
good.
thank you.
Please state your name for the record.
Bruce Kent Nixon, Jr.,
What is your date of birth?
May 9th, 1987.
How old are you today?
I'm 20,
How old were you back in July of 2005?
18.
Back in July of 2005, what were your plans for the fall of 2005?
I was going to go back to school, play basketball or something.
What school was that?
Baker County.
What grade would you have been in Baker County High School?
12th.
Where have you been living since July 15th of 2005?
Duval County Jail.
Now tell the jury about your size when you were arrested on June 15th, 2005.
About 5'11", weighed about 160, about 155.
And what is your size today?
I'm about 6'2", I weigh about 185, 190 somewhere.
Why have you been living in jail since July 15th, 2005?
I participated in the murder of the Sumners.
Of who?
Sumners.
Was that Carol and Reggie Sumner?
Yes, sir.
Are you guilty of participating in that murder?
Yes, sir.
Are you guilty of kidnapping Carol and Reggie Sumner?
Yes, sir.
Are you guilty of robbing them?
Yes, sir.
Are you guilty of killing them?
Yes, sir.
Are you guilty of killing them?
Yes, sir.
Have you pled guilty to those charges?
Yes, sir.
Who participated in that crime with you?
Me, Alan Wade, Tiffany Cole, and Michael Jackson.
And do you see Alan Wade here in court?
Yes, sir.
Would you please point to him and say where he's seated?
Right there.
Your Honor, may the record indicate the witness has identified the defendant. And the court says it may. Showing what's been entered into evidence is State's Exhibit 125. Who is this?
Tiffany Cole,
State's 124.
Michael Jackson.
State's 126.
That's Alan.
State's 127.
That's me.
Please tell the jury how you first became involved in the plot to kill Carol and Reggie Sumner.
Alan came over with the RX-8, came over to my house, and he asked me about robbing somebody.
Describe the Mazda RX-8 for the jury.
It's like brownish gray, like silver color.
Was Alan Wade alone when he came and discussed this plot with you?
Yes, sir.
In relation to when the Sumners were abducted, how long before, approximately, did you have that conversation with Alan Wade?
About 2 weeks, somewhere around there.
Do you know for sure that it was 2 weeks?
No, I don't really know how long it was, but it was a couple weeks before that.
Did he give you any details about killing at that time or the robbery at that time?
No, sir.
At that time, did you know it was going to be a murder?
No, sir.
Did he tell you anything about the Sumners or how old they were or anything like that?
No, sir.
Did you tell Alan Wade at that point that you wanted to be involved in the robbery?
No, sir.
It wasn't discussed anything further than Alan Wade had planned to rob people?
No, sir.
What was the next thing that happened that got you involved in the case?
He called me one night and asked me if I wanted to go with them and help them dig a hole.
Who called you?
Alan.
And how did Alan Wade call you?
He called me and asked me if I wanted to dig a hole.
Did he call you on your cell phone?
Yes, sir.
And tell the jury what words the defendant used, if you can remember.
What do you mean?
Well, what did he say to you? If you specifically, what words did he say to you about digging a hole?
He said we're going to dig a hole and rob somebody.
What did you say to that?
I said, yeah.
When Alan Wade told you those words, did you know who Michael Jackson was?
No, sir.
Did you know who Tiffany Cole was?
No, sir.
Have you ever met either of them? Have you ever met either of them in your life?
No, sir.
So what did you do in preparation for digging this hole with Alan Wade?
I went and got shovels.
Tell the jury about that.
I went around the neighborhood looking for shovels and stuff, like looking for sheds and stuff, and I seen it leaning up against the shed, so I grabbed it. I grabbed 4 of them.
When did Alan Wade get to your house to pick you up?
About 20 minutes later.
What time of the day was this approximately?
At night.
It was late?
Yes, sir.
When he picked you up, what car was he driving or what was he in?
RX-8.
The same Mazda RX-8 that you were in 2 weeks earlier?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury who was with the defendant, Alan Wade.
Tiffany Cole and Michael Jackson.
Is this the first time you met Michael Jackson and Tiffany Cole?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury how many shovels you had.
4 of them.
Showing you what's been entered into evidence is State 665. Are these the 4 shovels you took?
Yes, sir.
Where did you and those 4 shovels, Tiffany Cole, Alan Wade, and Michael Jackson, go?
Go looking for a hole, somewhere to dig a hole.
Tell the jury where y'all went.
We went over to where I used to stay in Georgia. We went down the road, and it wasn't a good spot. So we went across the street and down the road, and it looked like some woods. So we went in there and looked for it.
When y'all were deciding what place to dig this hole, was everyone participating in the decision as to where to dig it?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Where were you seated in the Mazda?
Back seat.
Who was sitting next to you?
Alan,
Who was in the front seat?
Michael Jackson, and Tiffany Cole.
Tell the jury what happened when you finally found a place to dig this hole.
After we found a hole, we started digging a hole. Tiffany was holding a light while we was digging a hole.
Tiffany Cole held what?
She held the light while I was digging the hole.
A flashlight?
Yes, sir.
And who dug the hole?
Me, Alan Wade, and Tiffany, Michael Jackson.
All right, the 3 of y'all did?
Yes, sir.
What shovels did you use?
The 2 middle ones.
This one, and this one?
Yes, sir.
And how did the 3 of y'all use 2 shovels?
We took turns.
Who did the majority of the digging?
Me and Alan.
And why was that?
We were strong.
Now, Bruce, at this point, do you know what Alan Wade, Tiffany Cole, and Michael Jackson had discussed in reference to this crime?
No, sir.
And all you know is that all you know is what Alan Wade has told you.
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury at this point, when you're digging the hole, what is your knowledge about what's going to happen?
That a robbery going to be taking place?
And how was the hole going to be related to the robbery?
How? I didn't know then.
Did you know the hole was related to the robbery?
Yes, sir.
In some fashion?
Yes, sir.
How long did it take you to dig the hole?
About 30 minutes.
How big was the hole approximately?
About 6 foot long by 4 foot deep.
And when you're done digging the hole, what do you do with the shovels?
We keep them there.
Where was the Mazda while you were digging the hole?
Out at the gate?
So the Mazda couldn't get back to the actual hole?
No. No, sir.
That's a no?
No, sir.
And you left the shovels at the hole?
Yes, sir.
What happened when you went back into the Mazda?
We started driving back to my house.
And then what was the next step in this plot?
Well, Alan asked if I can go with him. Alan asked Michael Jackson.
What do you mean, go with them? Explain that to the jury.
Go with them. He asked him if I could go with them to help them do it.
He asked Michael Jackson?
Yes, sir.
He being Alan Wade?
Yes, sir.
What did Michael Jackson say?
Michael Jackson said, yeah. He said he can go, talking about me.
Now tell the jury what you soon after that learned about what the actual plot was.
We were trying to figure out if we were going to wait on them to come home, or if we were going to be there, wait on them to come home, or go in there while they're home.
Okay, so who are you talking about?
The Sumners.
So there was a discussion as to whether or not you could actually be inside the home waiting for them to come in before you took them,
Yes, sir.
or whether or not you would actually go into the home when they were there.
Yes, sir.
What was your knowledge about whether or not the Sumners were going to be killed?
Michael Jackson was going to do it.
Michael Jackson was going to kill the Sumners?
Yes, sir.
And when did you know that?
We were talking about it, the conversation, when we were having a conversation about it, it came up. He said he was going to do it with a shot.
A shot?
Yes, sir.
Who was having these conversations with you and Michael Jackson about how you were going to commit this crime and how the Sumners were going to die?
All of us.
All of you? Please tell the jury what names.
Tiffany, Alan Wade, Michael Jackson, everybody.
Everybody was participating in these conversations?
Yes, sir.
At what point did you know what the hole you had just dug was for?
Yes, sir.
And what was the hole for?
For the Sumners.
For the Sumners?
Yes, sir.
And you knew this before you ever went into their house?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury what other preparations were made to commit this crime.
They had gloves, and they had a gun, a toy gun.
Tell the jury about this toy gun.
It was one of them little It's not no BB gun, but it's got a little plastic pellets, I think.
Like little yellow pellets?
Yes, sir.
Now, we talked about a shot. I want to make sure the jury understands. What kind of shot are you talking about? Are you talking about with a gun?
What do you mean?
When you say Michael Jackson was going to kill the Sumners, explain that.
No, shot with medicine, a needle.
Like a needle, not a gun.
Yes, sir.
So there was a plastic gun, gloves. Were there any preparations made in casing the house or calling the Sumners? Tell the jury about that.
We were driving around the house looking at the houses and how we were going to do it and stuff.
And who was driving?
Tiffany Cole,
And who else was in the Mazda with her?
me, Michael Jackson, and Alan.
And in relation to when you pre-dug the grave, when are you riding by the house?
The day later, next day?
The next day, and it was in the daytime?
Yes, sir.
Was Tiffany Cole calling the Sumners?
Yes, sir.
Who had cell phones at that particular time?
Me, Tiffany, Michael Jackson.
And did you have each other's numbers programmed in your cell phone?
Yes, sir.
Do you know if Michael Jackson had two phones or one phone?
No, sir.
Now, why are you doing this? Why are you participating in this plan?
For money,
Tell the jury why you would do something like that for money.
because I ain't really have nobody to support me, so the only way I thought to get money was to do this.
How much money was discussed?
$200,000.
How much?
$200,000?
200,000?
Yes, sir.
In preparation for this crime, did you, Alan Wade, Tiffany Cole, and Michael Jackson ever go to an Office Depot?
Yes, sir.
And what were you doing in that Office Depot?
Walking around the store?
What was Alan Wade doing?
He was walking around the store with me.
What was purchased at the Office Depot?
All I seen was they got saran wrap. I don't know what else they got. That's the only main thing that I seen.
Did it look something like States 80?
Yes, sir.
So you saw this?
Yes, sir.
Because it was so big. Who bought it?
Tiffany and Michael Jackson.
Tiffany and Michael did?
Yes, sir.
After they went to Office Depot, how long before you went over to the Sumner house?
I'm not sure.
When you went to the Sumner house, were you supplied duct tape to use?
Yes, sir.
Who actually carried the duct tape?
Alan.
The defendant, Alan Wade?
Yes, sir.
What did you have when you went over to the Sumner house?
I had a gun.
You had the plastic gun?
Yes, sir.
What time of day did y'all go over to commit this crime?
About 10 o'clock at night.
Did you ever reach the decision as to whether or not you would wait for them inside the home or whether you would just go in?
Yes, sir. We decided that we were going to go in while they were at home.
How did y'all get to the Sumner home?
Tiffany Cole drove.
Who was in the car when you drove over there?
Me, Alan, and Michael Jackson.
Who decided who would go into the house?
Decided me and Alan was going to go in.
Where were you dropped off in relation to the home?
At the park right by the house?
It's not far?
No, sir.
Tell the jury what you and Alan Wade did next.
After that, we got out of the car, walked up to the house. We got the gloves on, and we knocked on the door, and Miss Sumner came to the door. We asked to use the phone.
Who knocked on the door?
Me and Alan,
Who asked Carol Sumner to use the phone?
both of us.
Y'all were standing right next to each other?
Yes, sir.
And you both had gloves on?
Yes, sir.
Where was the gun at this point?
I had it in my belt right here.
Where was the duct tape at this point?
Alan had it in his belt.
Where was Tiffany Cole and Michael Jackson?
They're out in the car.
What was the plan in relation to where Michael Jackson would be during this process?
He was going to be out in the car until we covered up their eyes so the Sumners couldn't see him.
So the plan was to cover up their eyes so they couldn't see,
Yes, sir.
and then Michael Jackson would come in.
He was going to come in, yes, sir.
Now, why would you have to cover up people's eyes so they couldn't see if the plan was to give them a shot and bury them in this grave?
Mike said it was a mind thing, that when he killed them, he didn't want them to see him or something like that.
Okay, that's what Michael Jackson told you?
Yes, sir.
And Michael Jackson often referred to psychological things and mind things like that?
Yes, sir.
Was Michael Jackson calling the shots in this case?
Yes, sir.
Are you fully participating?
Yes, sir.
Is Tiffany Cole fully participating?
Yes, sir.
And is this defendant, Alan Wade, fully participating?
Yes, sir.
Now, what happens when that door opens up and you ask to use the phone, you and Alan Wade?
We walk in the house. We walk in the house and pulled out the phone, and then we were walking in. Alan grabbed Mr. Sumner and sat him down in the chair. Then I pulled out the gun. That's when we said, you know what I'm saying, we need your bank cards and stuff.
Was the plan to rob the Sumners of jewelry and cash?
No, sir. For the credit card, for the card.
Tell the jury who pulled out the phone line.
Sir?
Who pulled out that phone line?
Alan Wade.
And what were you doing when Alan Wade, right after he pulls out the phone line?
I had the gun on Mr. and Mrs. Sumner.
Describe the gun a little bit more. Did it look real?
Yes, sir. It looked real, but it wasn't real.
What were the Sumners doing after Alan Wade grabbed Mr. Sumner around the neck and put him on the couch?
What'd they do?
What were they doing?
Miss Sumner crying, and she was just saying, don't hurt me, and stuff like that.
What did you say in response to that?
I told them everything was going to be all right. You know what I'm saying? Just try to calm them down.
And did you have the gun out and pointed towards them?
Yes, sir.
What happened next with the duct tape?
I brought Mr. and Mrs. Sumner in the room, and I duct taped their legs and their hands together, and I stood in the room with them.
Did you duct tape any other parts of their bodies?
Yes, sir, on their eyes, so Michael Jackson could come in, and so they can't see him.
Did you cover their mouths
Yes, sir, I covered their mouths.
so they couldn't scream?
Yes, sir.
Now, at that point, how did y'all get Michael Jackson into the house?
He beeped me and said, you ready? I said, yeah, you can come in. He came in.
On your Nextels?
Yes, sir.
Showing the jury what's been entered into evidence of State's Exhibit 46, does this appear to be the type of duct tape that you used to bind the Sumners?
Yes, sir.
Showing what's been entered as State's 48, does this appear to be the door that Alan Wade knocked on?
Yes, sir.
And State's Exhibit 56, is this the spare bedroom where you kept Carol and Reggie Sumner in bed with a gun and had duct tape on? We'll skip that.
Yes, sir.
And who was in the room in States 56 with you and the Sumners? Who else was there? Was anyone else there?
No, sir.
Tell the jury what was happening while you were guarding the Sumners.
Michael Jackson and Alan were going around looking for bank statements and stuff.
Did they know where the bank statements specifically were?
No, sir.
Was a large pile of mail and statements actually taken from the home?
Yes, sir.
And who were the two people that were looking for those bank statements?
Michael and Alan.
What was the next thing that happened after they found what they were looking for?
Michael Jackson went out to the car and told us to bring Mr. and Mrs. Sumner into the Lincoln.
And did you do that?
Yes, sir.
What happened when you got there?
When we got to the Lincoln,
Yes, sir.
we were helping them in the car. We put them in the trunk.
Did you give anyone any water or anything like that?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury about that.
Miss Sumner said she was thirsty, so I walked over to the refrigerator and got her a bottled water.
How did she drink the bottled water if she had tape on her mouth?
I took the tape off of her mouth.
Did you put it back on?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury how the Sumners were able to get into the trunk.
We helped them in there. Me and Alan helped them,
What are the Sumners doing at this point?
laying in the back of the trunk.
What was the plan once they were inside the trunk?
We were going to drive to the hole.
Before you ever went in that house, did y'all describe or discuss how you were going to avoid police contact?
Yes, sir. Michael Jackson said that while we were driving the car, if the police stop us, that he was going to drive ahead and make it look like, to make them chase them, make a diversion.
What happened when you got into the Lincoln?
We drove out to the hole.
Who drove?
Alan Wade.
Who was in the passenger seat?
I was.
Where did you go before you went to the hole?
Sir?
Did you go somewhere before you went to the hole?
Yes, sir. We went to the gas station.
Tell the jury about that.
The gas needle was on empty, so we went and filled up the car.
Did you go to the gas station that was near the home?
Yes, sir.
Near the house?
A little bit down the road.
And who filled the Lincoln with gas?
It was me or Alan. I don't really remember which one it was.
Who paid for it?
Michael Jackson.
And was Michael Jackson and Tiffany Cole there?
Yes, sir.
What car were they driving?
The RX-8.
After you got the gas and paid for it, is that when you headed out to the hole?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you States 47, Mr. Nixon, just to show the jury the path you took. The Sumner house was on Reed Avenue.
Yes, sir.
And Reed Avenue is where on this map?
Reed Avenue?
Yeah, where the Sumners are. Is that indicated by a dot on the map? I know you can't see it specifically.
No, I don't really know my way around Jacksonville.
Okay, when you drove, did you drive interstate out west on I-10?
I'm not really sure.
Well, what road did you use to get to the grave site? Is that road the road that goes north from McClinney?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I know that.
And do you know if you dug the grave in Florida or in Georgia?
It was in Georgia.
Was it like 20 miles into Georgia, or was it closer to the border?
Close to the border.
When you went to the same hole you went to the same hole you had dug 2 days before,
Yes, sir.
is there a discussion on Nextels between y'all and Michael Jackson about what was going to happen on the way out there?
Sir?
Are you able to communicate with Michael Jackson in the Mazda by your Nextels?
Yes, sir. We are, but we ain't really saying nothing. We weren't talking.
You're not calling each other,
No, sir.
but you did have that beep beep capability.
Yes, sir, but we weren't talking.
All right, tell the jury what happens when you get out there.
When we get out there, we pull up to the grave site. Michael Jackson went up to the car and popped the trunk, and seeing that the duct tape was off of them and started screaming, started talking about putting duct tape back on them. So I walked around and put duct tape back on them because I didn't put it on real tight. I just put it on there so
I'm sorry, Mr. Nixon, keep going.
I put on the duct tape, put it back over their eyes and stuff and over their arms and their feet because they got all the way out of it.
You didn't put the duct tape on very tight back at the house?
No, sir.
And how long had the Sumners been in the trunk before y'all popped it?
The ride from Jacksonville to Georgia.
So it took a while to get there, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, what were the Sumners doing in the back of the trunk when they had gotten out of their duct tape?
They were hugging.
And you saw that?
Yes, sir.
Again, why did Michael Jackson get so upset about their duct tape being on?
Because he didn't want them to see him.
And he didn't want them to see Michael Jackson?
No, sir.
And again, why was that?
Because he said that when he killed them, that he didn't want them to see him because it was a mind thing.
Showing you what's been entered as States 30, Mr. Nixon, is this the road y'all drove down to get to the burial site?
Yes, sir.
Can you show the jury, I know it's just off the map, but where you used to live in relation to this site?
On the bottom right here?
Towards the bottom there?
Yes, sir.
And what is that building picture at the bottom?
That's the fire station.
Showing stage 31. Is this the gravesite?
Yes, sir.
Can you show the jury what gate you're talking about?
Where that first van is going up that road.
Right here?
Yes, sir.
Is this where the gravesite is?
Yes, sir.
Show the jury on this map where you pop the trunk to find the Sumners hugging each other.
Right here where that van is.
Where was the Mazda when you popped the trunk and the Lincoln was right here?
2 vans behind it.
Here?
Yes, sir.
And you got them re-duct taped. What happened next?
After I re-duct taped them, Alan tried to back it up into the hole, but he couldn't, so I jumped in and backed it up into the hole.
Is that the only time you ever drove the Lincoln?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever have control of the Lincoln car keys other than that time you backed it up to the hole?
No, sir.
Who had control of the Lincoln car keys?
Michael Jackson. Alan Wade was driving. He had the keys, but he had the keys after Alan had them.
Where was Tiffany Cole while you were backing up the Lincoln?
Tiffany Cole was on the road right by the RX-8,
Show the jury on the map where that is.
right here.
Tell the jury what happened when you finally get the Lincoln to the gravesite.
Popped the trunk. They popped the trunk. After they popped the trunk, Michael Jackson told me to go stand with Tiffany on the road. He said, go watch Tiffany.
Now, who was in the trunk when you popped it at the gravesite?
The Sumners.
Now, did the trunk face the grave or did the car face the grave?
Yes, sir, face the grave.
Trunk did?
Like right beside it, yes, sir.
So you actually backed in.
Yes, sir.
Who was in the trunk when you popped it?
The Sumners.
Were they still duct taped?
Yes, sir, because I just duct taped them back.
Now, when you popped that trunk and Michael told you to go back to wait with Tiffany, did you know what was going to happen to the Sumners?
Yes, sir.
What was going to happen to the Sumners?
They were about to die.
And you knew that.
Yes, sir.
When you left the gravesite, who was still at the gravesite?
Alan and Michael.
Do you know what happened at the gravesite when you weren't there?
No, sir.
Do you know that the Sumners were killed there?
Yes, sir.
How did the Lincoln get back from the gravesite to the road?
I'm not real sure. I don't know.
Someone drove it back out.
Yes, sir. Somebody drove it out.
And they were able to drive it backwards
Yes, sir.
and frontwards?
Yes, sir.
Who got into what car to leave the gravesite?
Me and Alan got in the Lincoln, and then they got in the RX-8.
And who drove the Lincoln?
Alan,
Where were the shovels?
in the trunk.
Of what?
The Lincoln. I didn't know till I came to jail that they were in the trunk.
They weren't left at the gravesite because you've seen them in the trunk.
No, sir.
So you were in the passenger seat and Alan was driving.
Yes, sir.
Where did y'all drive to?
We drove to Sanderson
Why did you drive there?
to drop the car off.
Who followed you to Sanderson?
Michael Jackson, and Tiffany.
And they're in the Mazda still?
Yes, sir.
And Tiffany was driving?
Yes, sir.
What happened when you got to the Sanderson side?
We got out of the car and we wiped it down and stuff.
Who's we?
Me, Michael Jackson, Alan Wade.
And did you leave the car there?
Yes, sir.
Did you leave the shovels in the trunk?
Yes, sir.
Did you take anything else out of the car?
No, sir.
Where did you and Alan Wade and the defendant go?
We went to the RX-8 where Tiffany and Michael Jackson were.
And where did you sit?
We both sat in the back seat.
You and Alan Wade sat in the back seat?
Yes, sir.
Where did y'all go?
We went to the hotel after that. No, we went straight to the ATM.
Did you go to the ATM late at night?
Yes, sir.
Did y'all go to Walmart late at night?
Yes, sir.
Did you also go back to the hotel room and go through the property y'all had found?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury what was taken out of the house when you, Michael Jackson, and Alan Wade were there the first time.
Coins and bank statements and stuff like that.
And the ATM card?
Yes, sir.
Now, going back to the gravesite, did you notice Michael Jackson with any pads?
Yes, sir. He had a yellow pad like them right there.
Just like what the jury has?
Yes, sir.
What did Michael Jackson tell you about what was on that pad?
Numbers, ATM numbers.
PIN numbers?
Yes, sir.
Did anyone ever go back to the Sumner home?
Yes, sir. Tiffany and Alan did.
And when was that?
When I was at the hotel with Michael, I was in the bathtub. My knee was messed up. I was soaking my knee. I got out, and he said they went back to the Sumner's house.
And who is he?
Michael Jackson said that.
Is that when the computer was taken
Yes, sir.
and the computer was later pawned?
Not sure.
Now, did you get money for your involvement in this case?
Yes, sir.
How much money did you get approximately?
About $200. That's all you could get at the time.
That was all you could get out of the ATM?
Yes, sir.
How long do you stay with this group?
Like a day later,
And then what happened a day later?
I went home. They dropped me off at my house.
Did you ever go to South Carolina?
No, sir.
Did you know they were going to South Carolina?
Yes, sir.
That was part of the plan, that they were going to go to South Carolina?
Yes, sir. They had rented a car or something. They rented a car they had to get took back.
Did you receive a call from Alan a couple days later?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury about that.
He said that the car got found in Sanderson.
Why did he call and tell you that?
Why did he call? He called to tell me. He just called and told me.
Did he tell you to be cool, don't worry about it?
Yeah, be cool. Don't worry about it.
During this period of time, after you got dropped off, but before you got arrested, did you go to a party and get wasted?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury about how you got so inebriated.
I was on pills and I was drinking beer out of a keg.
Where did you get all these pills from?
Sumner's house, and I had some because I had pills too.
Do you remember everything that happened that night?
No, sir.
Is it possible you may have talked about this case that night and you just don't remember?
It's possible I could have talked about it.
I want to talk to you a little bit about your relationship with Alan Wade. When did you first become friends with Alan Wade?
When I was 13,
And did you remain friends from the time you were 13 till the time you were 18?
yes, sir.
Did y'all play basketball together?
Yes, sir.
Did you consider him one of your best friends?
Yes, sir.
What was your relationship with Frida Wade Gainey, his mother?
She's like my mama. When I got in trouble or I ran away from home, I used to go to his house and stay with him.
Tell the jury about how she treated you.
She treated me like her son.
Did you love her?
Yes, sir.
Did you actually have contact with her after you were arrested?
Yes, sir.
Did y'all discuss your predicament in this case?
No, sir.
Did she provide any counsel or support for you during this time?
Yes, sir.
What was your relationship with Michael Jackson?
My co-defendant.
Did you know him any more than the 2 days you spent with him?
No, sir.
How about Tiffany Cole?
No, sir.
Was she ever your girlfriend?
No, sir.
Did you know her any more than the 2 days you spent with her?
No, sir.
Why do you know Michael Jackson and Tiffany Cole?
Because we did this robbery and stuff.
Did Alan Wade know either Tiffany Cole or Michael Jackson, to your knowledge?
Yes, sir. He knew Michael Jackson.
Did Alan seem to know Michael Jackson fairly well?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury about when you were arrested, when you were interviewed by the police.
Yes, sir.
Did you cooperate with the police?
Yes, sir.
Now, initially, did you tell the police the truth?
No, sir.
And why not?
Because I didn't want to get in trouble, and I was afraid of getting in trouble.
Did you eventually tell the police the complete truth?
Part of it, after I done found out that my other two co-defendants was saying stuff.
Did you deny or tell the police that you did not know the Sumners were going to die?
Yes, sir.
Why did you lie to the police and tell them you did not know the Sumners were going to die?
Because I was afraid of getting in trouble.
But you did know the Sumners were going to die.
Yes, sir.
Did you take the police to the gravesite?
Yes, sir.
And what were you feeling or thinking when you were at the gravesite?
I felt bad, but at the same time, I thought it would help me. That's why I did it, so both of them. I ain't gonna sit here and lie and say I felt bad. I would be lying. That's what I'm saying, both. It's a mix of both of them.
A mix of both? You felt remorse and you were scared you were going to get in trouble.
Yes, sir.
You also thought it would help you.
Yes, sir.
Now, how were you acting at the scene?
I was on methadone and I was on pills and stuff. I was crying. I was out of my mind.
Have you seen the video of that taking the police to the gravesite?
Yes, sir.
And tell the jury how you were acting in that video.
I was crying the whole time.
And were you putting your head on someone's shoulder?
Yes, sir. Officer Dobson, he's the sheriff in McClenny.
There was a time, Mr. Nixon, where you, Michael Jackson, Alan Wade, and Tiffany Cole were together, and you actually saw Frida Wade. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury about that.
After we dug the hole, we went back to Alan's house. His mama wasn't supposed to come home, but that morning she came home, and when she came home, she was cussing at me, and I don't think she was cussing, but she was yelling at Michael Jackson. She didn't like Michael Jackson.
Did she ever?
That's the first time I ever seen them talk to each other.
That's the first time you ever seen?
Miss Frida and Michael Jackson talk, but she was screaming at him, telling him to get out of the house and all that.
And did y'all leave the house?
Yes, sir.
Because you weren't even supposed to be there, right?
Sir?
Y'all weren't supposed to be at her house.
Oh, me? She didn't care about me. She was surprised to see me. She was like, Bruce, where you come from?
But she didn't like to see Michael Jackson.
No, sir.
And y'all left.
Yes, sir.
And that's when you started staying in hotels.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the jury, Mr. Nixon, what you have pled guilty to?
Second-degree murder and armed kidnapping and armed robbery.
And at one time, were you facing the death penalty? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And now you are not.
No, sir.
Tell the jury what your sentence range is.
52 to life.
52 years
Yes, sir.
to life?
Yes, sir.
Who will decide your sentence?
Judge Weatherby?
Judge Weatherby, this judge?
Yes, sir.
Have I promised you any sentence?
No, sir.
Has Mr. Plotkin promised you any sentence?
No, sir.
Has anyone in my office promised you?
No, sir.
So you can get a life sentence,
Yes, sir.
and that will be completely up to this judge.
Yes, sir.
You understand that?
Yes, sir.
Now, you do hope to some degree that your testimony helps you, right?
Yes, sir.
Why else are you here testifying? Obviously, you're wanting to help your sentence. But why else are you here telling the jury everything that you know?
Sir, what do you mean by that?
Well, do you feel bad about what happened?
Yes, sir, I feel bad about what happened.
Tell the jury about that.
Well, I felt bad for what happened. You know what I'm saying? Me and Alan got in this situation. We were young and we had bad role models at the time. We was hanging out with somebody we shouldn't have never been hanging out with. We supposed to have been better than this, supposed to have been going to school and staying out of trouble and just having fun. But somebody came into our life and messed up our life and got stirred the wrong direction. We wasn't even supposed to be going through this. We supposed to be on the street right now, having fun, staying out of trouble. But it seems like all the good people got locked up.
Do you understand, Mr. Nixon, that there is a pretty decent chance you could get a life sentence in this case?
Yes, sir, I know it.
And you were going to be okay with that if you get a life sentence?
No, I'm not going to be okay with it, but I'm going to have to face it.
You understand you could get it?
Yes, sir.
That's all the questions I have. I'll defer to cross-examination.
All the good people get locked up. Is that what you just said, sir?
Yes, sir.
All. You consider yourself a good person?
Yes, sir.
May I approach, Your Honor? Sure. Sir, you picked up this shovel, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
You picked up this shovel up, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
You picked this big shovel up, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
You picked this shovel up, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
You did that. Alan Wade didn't do that, did he?
No, I did it.
Tiffany Cole didn't do that, did she?
No, sir.
Michael Jackson didn't do that.
No, sir.
And sir, you were familiar with Georgia, weren't you? You grew up and were taken on a school bus past that road up there, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
You picked that gravesite out, didn't you?
We all did.
You knew it, didn't you?
Yeah, I knew it.
That was right across from where you used to live, the fire station, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
You went in that house, didn't you, sir?
Yes, sir.
You had duct tape and duct taped their eyes and mouths and arms and legs, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
You didn't put it on real tight, is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
But you did it, right?
Yes, sir.
Anybody drug you to do that?
No, sir.
Anyone force you to do that?
No, sir.
Anyone threaten you to do that?
No, sir.
You picked the Sumners up and put them in the trunk of the Lincoln, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Anybody drug you to do that?
No, sir.
Anybody forced you to do that?
No, sir.
Anyone threaten you to do that?
No, sir.
You, sir, backed the Lincoln into the gravesite by the hole, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
You had your hands on the steering wheel, right?
Yes, sir.
You're backing, looking around by the bushes, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
Anyone drug you to do that?
No, sir.
Anyone threaten you to do that?
No, sir.
You went out there 2 nights before, right?
Yes, sir.
You feel sorry for the Sumners then?
I ain't know them then. No, sir.
You wanted money, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
And you wanted lots of money, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Because you like money and you like girls and you like partying, don't you?
Yes, sir.
You remember a fellow by the name of Alec Griffiths?
Yes, sir.
He was at a keg party, wasn't he?
Yes, sir.
When you were drinking kegs or handstand or keg stands, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you feel sorry for the Sumners then?
No, sir.
Did you get to Sheriff Dobson and put your head on the shoulder and cry about it then?
No, sir.
When you were digging the graves 2 days before, did you have gloves on?
No, sir.
Was it easy work, heavy work? Were you sweating?
Yes, sir.
What shovel did you use? Which one of those 4?
Both the middle ones?
The middle medium-sized ones?
Yes, sir.
Were you sweating?
Yes, sir.
You're familiar with that area of Georgia, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
But you testified that the RX-8 with Michael and Tiffany was leading the way to the burial site with the Sumners.
Me and Alan was with them. They were driving. She was driving.
Right, but they've never been there before other than 2 nights before, right?
No, sir.
So they knew how to get there?
No, sir.
What time was it when you got there with the Sumners?
When we got there with the Sumners,
Yeah, when you banked the Lincoln up to the grave and helped bury them alive, what time was it?
about, not real sure, about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock.
About what time?
I'm not sure. I think about 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock.
About midnight?
Yes, sir.
And if I recall your testimony correctly, sir, the trunk was opened at the gate or something like that, and the Sumners had managed to get free because you didn't put the duct tape on that tight?
Yes, sir.
And you got more duct tape and taped their eyes again, taped their mouth again, taped their arms again, and taped their legs again, didn't you, sir?
Yes, sir.
Made it tight, didn't you, sir?
I did it the same way I did it at the house.
And then you, sir, along with Jackson and Cole, buried the Sumners, didn't you?
No, sir.
You didn't lift one shovel and put dirt on there?
No, sir.
What were you doing?
I was up there walking with Tiffany Cole.
So you don't really know who buried the Sumners, do you?
No, sir.
At the gravesite, I think you told Mr. Mizrahi, that's when you finally realized the Sumner were going to die. Is that right?
No, sir.
I thought you just said that to Mr. Mizrahi.
I didn't say that.
You knew they were going to die
Yes, sir.
at the gravesite, right?
Before that.
Before that,
Yes, sir.
you didn't go for help.
No, sir.
Nobody drove you, threatened you, or coerced you to do this, right?
No, sir.
Didn't go for help before.
No.
You didn't go for help at the gravesite, did you?
No, sir.
You're in a separate car, right?
Yes, sir.
You go for help when you got back to Jacksonville or McClenny.
No, sir.
You go for help when you're doing keg stands.
No, sir.
You only went for help on March 12th. Sir?
When I got in trouble for it.
March 12th of '07, when you gave a sworn statement in this case with your attorney, Mr. Chipperfield, who's in the courtroom, right?
Repeat that question?
You only went for help March 12th when you gave a statement against Alan Wade. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
Because that's going to help you, right?
Help me or hurt me?
But already helped you, right? You were looking at the death penalty, sir, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
That's off the table, right?
Yes, sir.
Because you got a plea agreement now with this man right here, right?
Yes, sir.
And you didn't get convicted of first-degree murder. He let you plead to second-degree murder, didn't he?
Yes, sir. It don't really matter.
Doesn't really matter, sir?
I can get first-degree murder and still get 52 to life. I don't think the charge, I don't know how that goes.
You just testified to this jury, you pled to second-degree murder for 52 years to life, right?
Yes, sir. I don't see the difference between getting first-degree murder and get 52 to life. Same thing. It's carrying the same amount of time. I don't know about all that.
How old are you, sir?
I'm 20.
Okay, do you see a difference between life, never getting out, and 50 years? Do you see a difference to that, sir? No?
No, sir.
You feel you see a difference between life and death by lethal injection?
Yes, sir.
You don't want that, do you?
No, sir.
March 12th, 2007 is when you decided to get help, right, for yourself.
Yes, sir.
You gave a sworn statement, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's the same day you were allowed to plead to reduce charges and you signed a blue form, right?
Yes, sir.
And you stood in front of Judge Weatherby and you raised your right hand and you swore to tell the truth, right?
Yes, sir.
And you pled, sir, to 2 counts of second-degree murder, right?
Yes, sir.
2 counts of armed kidnapping,
Yes, sir.
2 counts of armed robbery.
Yes, sir.
And you got your deal, didn't you? 52 to life.
Yes, sir.
And that's to your advantage, don't you think?
Yes, sir. I ain't get the death sentence.
And you're hoping after all this is over and after all this testimony is over and you stand in front of Judge Weatherby, you're hoping that this prosecutor will stand up there and recommend a sentence of less than life, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
Doesn't matter who would be sitting in that chair, sir. You would testify against anybody to get a sentence better than death or life, wouldn't you?
Yes, sir.
I want to make sure I understand what you said about the ATMs and the Walmart and all that. According to you, this was after the gravesite thing, right?
Yes, sir.
The pictures, I think, he showed you some pictures from South Carolina, he says. You saw these pictures way before the gravesite thing, didn't you? The limousine and the champagne and all that.
Yes, sir.
That wasn't after this, was it?
No, sir.
Did you ever tell Frida Wade or Frida Gainey that you're going to get $40,000 for this crime?
No, sir.
And I think you said you lied to the police in the beginning. You lied to them a little more until you found out the other co-defendants were telling on you.
Yes, sir.
You didn't like that. That made you mad and angry, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
May I have a moment, Your Honor? I have one other question, Judge. Mr. Mizrahi asked you about these keys to the Lincoln, and I thought you said Michael had control of the keys, right?
Yes, sir. He was the one popping the trunk open.
And Michael pretty much had control of the whole thing, didn't he?
Yes, sir.
That's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
Was there a redirect of the crime?
There was, Your Honor. Mr. Nixon, Mr. Eller began his cross-examination by asking if anyone took you kicking and screaming into this crime. He asked you that a bunch of times. You remember those questions?
No, sir.
Anyone take Alan Wade kicking, screaming into this crime?
No, sir.
Anyone threaten him?
No, sir.
He did this as voluntarily as you did this, right?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Eller asked you if you would testify against anyone. Now, are you testifying against your best friend to get a deal? Is that why you're testifying against Alan Wade?
No, sir.
Well, why are you saying that Alan Wade's involved in this crime? Let me ask you this, Bruce. Was he involved in this crime?
Yes, sir.
Was Alan Wade with you the whole time?
Yes, sir.
And did he do it?
Yes, sir.
Or are you just saying that?
No, sir.
And Mr. Eller made a big deal about this deal or sworn statement that you got in March of 2007, right? That's when you gave me a statement, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Nixon, when you were arrested back in July of 2005, did you tell the police that Alan Wade was involved?
No, sir.
In your statement that you gave,
Afterwards?
yeah, tell the jury what you told the police about who was involved in this crime when you were interviewed.
I told them Alan Wade, Tiffany Cole, and Michael Jackson.
Did you say anyone else in the world was involved?
No, sir.
Did you say Ricky Weisner was involved?
No, sir.
Was Ricky with you when you gave the police portions of the statement?
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Nixon, when you were arrested, you had no idea about what anyone else had said about your involvement in the case, at least specifically, did you?
What do you mean?
Well, did the detectives in this case tell you what they had found in South Carolina?
No, sir.
Did they tell you where the property was located?
No, sir.
Did they tell you about fingerprint evidence?
No, sir. They ain't say nothing about that.
And all they said is your people up in South Carolina say you were involved.
They played me what they said and stuff.
Now, when you told them about Alan Wade, you were the person that brought Alan Wade into this thing. Is that right? At least you mentioned his name, not in connection with this crime, but you mentioned his name.
Yes, sir. After they played the statements, Tiffany Cole and Michael Jackson's statements and stuff saying, that's when I started talking because I wasn't going to say nothing. And then I seen that, you know what I'm saying, they were telling on me. So I was like, I'm trying to get out of trouble. So I'm going to start, you know what I'm saying, try to flip on them.
They never played you any Alan Wade statements, did they?
No, sir.
They only played you Tiffany Cole and Michael Jackson's.
Yes.
Mr. Nixon, you very easily could have told the detectives that just Tiffany Cole and Michael Jackson were involved in this case, correct?
Yes.
You could have kept your friend out of it.
Yes, sir.
Would that have been the truth?
No, sir.
Michael Jackson was in control of the Lincoln keys before the gravesite and at the gravesite, correct?
Yes, sir.
But then you and Alan Wade left the gravesite in that Lincoln, correct?
Yes, sir.
And Alan Wade was driving that Lincoln.
Yes, sir.
And then there were some court questions, Your Honor. I'll just read these as court questions. This is a court question from a juror. Regarding drugs and/or alcohol, were drugs and/or alcohol involved prior to the robbery or kidnapping?
Yes, sir.
Can you be more specific?
We smoked weed and we drank Lord Calvert.
How much money were you promised and how much was Mr. Wade promised?
Promised a lot of money, about $50,000, like somewhere between that. It's supposed to be split up even.
Do you smoke or did you smoke at the time?
Yes, sir.
What brand?
Are you talking about cigarettes?
Yes.
I didn't smoke cigarettes.
What about Mr. Wade? Did he smoke at the time?
I'm not sure. When he get messed up, he'll smoke, but he smoked Black and Milds and stuff.
You remember what?
That's what I smoked, Black and Milds and weed. That's all. I don't smoke cigarettes.
Well, we're talking about cigarettes.
No, sir.
Did Mr. Wade smoke cigarettes?
I'm not real sure.
Sir?
I'm not real sure.
All right, would you dig the hole? Why would you dig the hole without ever asking why you were doing it?
Because I knew I was getting money for it, so he said, you want to dig a hole for money? I was going to dig a hole for money.
Did Mr. Wade help you put the Sumners in the truck?
Yes, sir.
Did Wade, Cole, or Jackson ever explain to you why it was necessary to kill the Sumners after robbing it?
No, sir.
And then a follow-up on Cross.
Mr. Nixon, who promised you money?
Michael Jackson.
The court says any follow-up questions from the jury, their response.
That's all the questions in that. There's a couple other testimonies, Your Honor, that we're going to read in. Somehow my computer shut down. Unless Mr. Johnson has the, you have to read it. We're on page of the redirect examination by Mr. Mizrahi. You have that, Mr. Gunn?
Yes, I do, thank you.
Mr. Nixon, Mr. Kurtz asked you a series of questions about what you and Alan Wade did. He kept asking questions. Did you and your best friend do this? Did you and your best friend do that? Did you and your best friend access the ATM card hundreds of times to get money?
No, sir.
Who had control of the ATM card?
Michael Jackson.
Who had control of the proceeds of this crime?
Michael Jackson did.
If you were the mastermind, if you were the killer, if you would have done all the things in your mind, would you have let anyone else have that ATM card?
No, sir. I would have tried to get as much money as I could.
Would you have trusted Michael Jackson to get your ATM money for you and then have your hand off whatever it felt like?
No, sir.
Now, you did at one time, you were talking about Alan Wade, may have told you about a couple in San Marco 2 months before. You said that in deposition.
Yes, sir.
And subsequent to that, have you thought that maybe that was a little bit too long of a time?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea how long before this crime that he mentioned this couple in San Marco?
No, sir. I'm not really sure. I was just answering the best that I could, but my memory ain't real good.
And when you answered that question 2 months, was that about 2 years after this incident?
Yes, sir.
All you know is he told you sometime before.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Kurtz asked you a series of questions about being a fighter. I want to make sure this jury is clear. Are you telling this jury that you participated in this crime because you're scared of Michael Jackson?
No, sir.
Tell the jury why you did everything in this case that you did.
For money?
Did you listen to what Michael Jackson said because you thought he would beat you up or hurt you?
No, sir.
Why did you listen to what Michael Jackson said?
Because I knew I had to listen to him because he was the one with the plan. I didn't know how I was going to get money from him.
When he was telling you the plan, did he seem confident?
Yes, sir.
Did he seem like he knew what he was talking about?
Yes, sir.
Did he talk a good game?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Kurtz asked you a series of questions about whether you actually saw Michael Jackson in that Reed Avenue house.
Yes, sir.
Tell this jury how sure you are that he was in that home.
I'm positive. I heard him. I know his voice. His voice is different from Alan's. He had an up north accent.
Where did you grow up?
Sir?
Where did you grow up? What city?
In Tampa.
Tampa, Florida?
Tampa, Florida.
And where did you move from Tampa, Florida? To McClenny?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been living in McClenny?
On and off since I was 13, 14.
Something I think that was unclear. Were you taping the Sumner's eyes so they couldn't identify you later?
No, sir, so they couldn't identify Michael.
Okay, tell the jury why Michael said he wanted their eyes taped, even though the plan was to kill them. Tell the jury why he wanted their eyes taped.
He said it was a mind thing.
What does that mean?
Sir?
What does that mean, a mind thing? Tell the jury.
I guess he didn't want them to see him kill them, I guess.
Ricky asked you, you told Ricky about when you were leaving to go do this crime. Did he know about it?
Know about us robbing?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Did Ricky want to come with you?
Yes, sir.
What did you do?
I told him no.
Did Ricky Wisner do anything to help y'all commit this crime?
No, sir.
The shovels that were used, you know that a pre-dug grave, the two main shovels were used, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you testified that the snow shovel would not be good at actually breaking ground. Is that fair?
It's like plastic-like.
Do you have any idea what shovels were used to cover the Sumners in dirt?
No, sir.
Mr. Nixon, the snow shovel, would you hold that, please? You've dug holes before, correct?
Yes, sir.
Would you knock that against the ground? Do you think that snow shovel would be effective in lifting loose dirt from a pile of dirt onto something?
Yes, sir.
The fact this is the biggest shovel of all the shovels, correct?
Yes, sir.
If you were lifting a pile of dirt, you could lift the most dirt with this shovel.
Yes, sir.
In fact, this shovel has dirt on it, right?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Kurtz asked you a series of questions about whether or not the plan was to bury them alive. And that wasn't the plan. You never heard about burying alive, did you?
No, sir.
How did Michael Jackson tell you he was going to kill the Sumners again?
Medicine.
Give them some kind of shot?
Give them some kind of shot.
You don't know if that happened or not.
No, sir.
All you know is the Sumners were left in that grave.
Yes, sir.
The video that Mr. Kurtz played you, he played you a few seconds,
Yes, sir.
right? Before that, can you tell the jury what you were discussing with the detectives? Was it whether or not you wanted a lawyer or not?
Yes, sir.
Ricky came in when you were posing him, well, what if I tell them this? Are you saying that it's a story? What if I make something up?
No, sir.
Explain that further to the jury of why you're asking him in question form.
The detectives didn't want to answer my questions about going home, but they wanted to answer about everything else. So when Ricky came there, I asked him, what if I tell them this? Are they going to let me go home? I was asking him the questions because they wouldn't answer me.
What you told Ricky in there, first of all, did you know that you were being recorded?
Sir?
Did you have any idea that you were being recorded?
No, sir. I wouldn't have said nothing.
And were you whispering because you didn't want anyone to hear you? Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
When you're inquiring of Ricky, you're inquiring to see whether or not you should tell the police anything.
Yes, sir. I was asking, should I tell them? He was like, yes, tell them where the bodies are. And so I was asking him a question. I wasn't making a lot about it, you know what I'm saying, in the way to where if I tell him this, are they going to let me go home? It wasn't nothing like that. I was asking a question.
If you should actually talk.
Yes, sir. If I should talk to them because I didn't know what to do.
And that phrase when you said what happened, was that the truth?
Sir?
When you said that I was, what if I was at the grave and then walked away with Tiffany? Was that the truth?
Yes, sir.
Now, we've had meetings, correct, Mr. Nixon, before you gave your testimony on multiple, during your deposition and before your plea, and all things like that.
Yes, sir.
Have we ever had discussions about whether you were at the grave scene?
Yes, sir.
Have we ever had discussions about being at the grave scene and whether or not it would help or hurt your case?
Yes, sir. You told me that if I told them that I was there, it would help me more because I'm telling the truth, and they would know I'm telling the truth.
But you've never said you were at the grave scene.
No, sir.
Have you told anyone that you were at the grave scene?
Have I told anybody?
Yeah, have you ever said, I for sure was watching them being buried alive?
No, sir.
That's all the questions I have. And then we have one more. Mr. Johnson will start.
Good morning, Mr. Nixon. How are you, sir? Page 242.
242, thank you. All right.
Would you tell us your full name?
Bruce Kent Nixon, Jr.
Mr. Nixon, are you currently incarcerated?
Yes, sir.
Where are you incarcerated?
Washington, at Washington, Chipley, Florida.
Washington Correctional Institute?
Yes, sir.
And you're serving what sentence?
45 years.
Okay, sir. Mr. Nixon, were you a co-defendant with Alan Wade in the murder case involving the victims Reggie and Carol Sumner?
Yes, sir.
And for what I understand, you testified during Mr. Wade's penalty phase. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Prior to your testimony in that penalty phase, do you have an opportunity to speak to Mr. Wade's attorneys? And by them, I mean just identify them. One would be Frank Tassoni, a fairly large fellow with dark hair, tall, and the other being Refik Eller, shorter, also with dark hair.
No, sir, not that I remember.
Specifically, Mr. Nixon, do you recall a conference in the holding cell in the chute at the old courthouse where Mr. Tassoni would have prepared your penalty phase testimony?
No, sir.
Now, prior to this case that you became involved in with Mr. Wade, how long have you known Mr. Wade?
Since I was 12.
Did the two of you grow up together?
Yes, sir.
In what city?
Baker County.
And how would you characterize your friendship with Mr. Wade since he was 12?
My best friend.
Did he make you aware of his relationship with his father?
Yes, sir.
And what was that relationship?
He ain't have one.
I'm sorry?
He didn't have no relationship with him.
You know why that was?
His dad lived too far away. I don't know. I really don't understand too much, but his dad really ain't have nothing. He really had no relationship with his father.
Now, you indicated you were best friends since you were 12. How often would the two of you do things together?
Always.
Would that be every bit day just about? Since you were 12?
Yes, sir.
You ever meet his father?
He never came around.
Okay. Did you know, did Alan Wade Jr. share with you how that made him feel?
I know it hurt him. He always used to be talking about it.
And how did he feel?
I know it killed him.
Killed him? Okay, and from a young age, Mr. Nixon, did you become aware that Alan Wade started using drugs and alcohol?
Yes, sir.
Okay, how young was Mr. Wade when he began using drugs and alcohol?
We were young.
How young is young?
12.
And we were talking about drugs. What kind of drugs did you know Alan Wade to use?
We smoked marijuana and stuff.
Anything else that he graduated to stronger than marijuana?
Got older.
Yes. What was that?
Cocaine.
What else?
Pills. Popping pills and stuff.
What kind of pills?
Methadone, Xanax, Oxycontin, all types of pills, Lortabs, Percocet.
Do you think if he had some stronger parental supervision that he may have been able to keep him in line a little bit better?
Yes, sir.
What about his mother? What about his mother, Frida? Did she work a lot?
Yes, sir.
Did she ultimately come involved with another man?
Yes, sir.
Okay, did you come to meet a man named Michael Jackson?
Yes, sir.
Did Alan Wade ever relate to you an incident that occurred between him and Michael Jackson approximately 2 weeks before these homicides?
Yes, sir.
What did Alan Wade tell you about the incidents between himself and Michael Jackson?
He always told me somebody picked him up or something, threatened to put a gun in his mouth, talking about, I'm going to kill him, about his old lady.
You said that,
I found out it was Michael Jackson that did it.
I'm sorry, you said that Michael Jackson threatened him and put a gun in his mouth?
Yes, sir.
And it was involving Alan Wade's relationship with Michael Jackson's old lady?
Yes, sir.
Would that have been a woman named Carmen Massenet?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever meet her?
Yes, sir.
And was she a person who associated closely with both Michael Jackson and Alan Wade immediately preceding the events that y'all got yourself in trouble with? Did Carmen Massenet hang out with you, and not with you, but with Alan Wade and Michael Jackson immediately preceding these homicides?
I'm not sure. We were hanging out with him.
I'm sorry?
Me and Alan was hanging out with him.
You and Alan were hanging out with Michael Jackson and Carmen?
With the two girls,
Which two girls?
Carmen and Vanessa something,
Were they, and you knew them as having what occupation?
strippers.
So you and Alan Wade were hanging out with Carmen Massenet and a woman named Vanessa who was a stripper.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, was any of this information that we're talking about told by you to Mr. Wade's attorneys?
No, sir.
Okay, now specifically, Mr. Nixon, during the homicides, during this 2-day or 3-day period in which Carol and Reggie Sumner were robbed and killed, was Alan Wade high on drugs?
Yes, sir.
What drugs was he high on?
Cocaine, alcohol,
To what extent?
messed up.
When you say messed up, what do you mean?
He was beyond reality. He wasn't here.
He wasn't here?
No.
Was this a constant thing? I mean, was there ever a period during the 3-day period surrounding the homicides that he was sober?
No, sir. We were smoking and stuff, getting messed up the whole time.
And were you doing the same thing?
I wasn't doing the coke. I was doing alcohol and drinking, smoking and popping pills.
So you were smoking, popping pills, and drinking. He was smoking. Was he popping pills as well?
Yes, sir.
But he was also then adding cocaine to this mix.
Yes, sir.
Okay, with this information that you imparted to Alan's lawyers?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, one other question about Alan Wade. As kids and during this period from 12 to 18 that you knew Alan Wade, did the two of you engage in a game called the choking game?
Yes, sir.
What is the choking game?
We all used to do it growing up. It's when you breathe in and out and you stand up and you have somebody choke you out and you pass out.
And when you say that you have someone choke you out, is there pressure put on a particular part of the body?
The neck.
And then when the pressure is put on the neck, what's the result of that?
Pass out. You black out.
Black out. And did you see Alan Wade engage in this game?
We used to do it all the time.
Did you ever see him pass out?
Yes, sir.
And when he passed out, what was the result?
Fall down.
Fall down on the floor?
Yes, sir. You black out.
Did you see him, you previously testified you saw him under the influence of alcohol and drugs. Did you ever see him lose consciousness when he was under the influence of alcohol and drugs?
Yes, sir.
How many times would you say that happened?
A lot. We used to always do that.
Okay, and just to be sure, this choking game, did this happen? How many times do you think that he was choked till unconsciousness?
I couldn't count. Used to do it all the time.
Okay, did you ever relate that information to Alan Wade's attorney or his guilt phase attorney?
Never talked about it.
Once you ended up accepting a plea of guilty to these charges in return for a term of years, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did Frida Gainey, Alan Wade's mother, talk to you about that?
Yes, sir.
And did she recommend the plea to you?
Yes, sir.
And was she a person who helped influence you to take that offer?
Yes, sir.
I have no further questions.
Good morning, Mr. Nixon. How are you?
All right.
Good to see you again. The story that was related to you about the gun in Alan Wade's mouth was told to you by him or by somebody else?
By him.
Okay. Then you said you later figured out that the person he was referring to was Michael Jackson.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so he didn't tell you it was Michael Jackson. You figured it out later.
I didn't know his name at first.
Okay, and that incident took place before the several weeks leading up to this crime, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
A couple of weeks.
so sometime before.
Yeah, sometime before.
Do you know how long before?
I'm not exactly sure of the exact date.
It wasn't at the time you were planning the crime.
What do you mean, planning the crime?
Well, when you got involved with the process of planning this crime.
It was a couple weeks before then.
Before then?
A couple weeks before then.
A couple weeks before, okay. And Mr. Wade was still hanging out with Mr. Jackson at that time.
I don't know.
Well, when the four of you did this crime together, y'all were hanging out together.
We weren't hanging out together. I wasn't hanging out with them.
I know you were just there a couple of days before the incident, but in that brief 36, 48-hour period of time, the four of y'all were together.
We were together, yes.
Okay, you talked about the drug use that you and Alan Wade were doing at this time. Was Tiffany Cole and Michael Jackson also consuming drugs and alcohol to your knowledge?
Michael Jackson was. I don't know about, I think the girl was drinking and smoking.
Okay, and despite this alcohol and drug use, you were able to accomplish many things in this case that required you to have your normal faculties. Is that fair?
What do you mean by that?
Well, for example, you were able to drive, correct?
Girl was driving.
Well, you took the Lincoln Town car. It was you that was driving, right?
Yeah.
And Alan actually had to drive that car as well, right?
Yes, sir.
Because if my recollection is correct, you were at the grave site and you couldn't get the car back to the grave site, and it was Alan that had to come do it for you.
No, you got it mixed up.
I got it mixed up. So Alan's the one that drove all the way out to the grave site.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Okay, so he was able to accomplish the task of driving down Interstate 10 for 30 miles until you got to the grave site, correct?
You saying like because we can't drive it don't mean you messed up?
Well, you may have been high or drunk, but you were still able to accomplish certain tasks like driving, right?
Well, it's easy to drive, make thoughts to try to think about what's going on at the time. It's easy for me to get in the car and make a decision.
Okay, but nevertheless, it was Mr. Wade that drove first to the gas station to get gas and then out to the pre-dug grave, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but then he wasn't able to get the car back to the grave site and you took the car back there.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
You actually left about, what, 24 hours after this incident? You left the three of them, correct, and went back to Baker County?
Yes, sir.
And you took some money with you, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then the three of them, you don't know what happened to them.
No, sir.
Okay, do you know if you suffer any mental disease or defect based on your participation in this choking game?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay, how are you doing in prison? Are you taking classes?
Taking what classes?
I'm asking you, are you taking anything in terms of
I'm not doing nothing.
you're not trying to get your GED?
For what? Nothing.
Okay, so you're not taking advantage of anything the prison has to offer.
Nothing. I sleep. That's what I do.
I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Nixon. That's all the questions I have.
Was there any redirect? Does that conclude the reading of the prior testimony? All right. Thank you, Mr. Kalinowski. Appreciate your time. It seems appropriate to take a short break. I'm going to ask the jury to step back in the jury room. You all will be in recess about 10 minutes. The remainder, please remain in the courtroom. Jury is in recess for 10 minutes. What's next?
Your Honor, we have two victim impact statements and the state.
Right, okay. Mr. Johnson,
Yes, sir.
your first witness is going to be,
It'll be Dr. Lawrence Steinberg. It's an expert. It'll be fairly long. An opening statement to do because we reserved.
well, yeah, I mean, what you do. I'm still awaiting your list of mitigators, whenever you have a chance to do that. I know this may seem, something about the barn door and the cows have all gone, but it occurs to me, should we consider invoking the rule of sequestration at this point, which no one ever did before, which is part of my, earlier issue?
The state's done, the state has kept detective and medical examiner out of the courtroom. Obviously, the family's in the courtroom. Defense counsel asking if I have an objection to their family member being in the courtroom. At this point,
And in that instance, I will trust the council to handle the matter appropriately. All right. Then we will also be in recess for 10 minutes.
so that was your first. Hey, who's there? Who's there? Remember that guy? Got one right here. Name got on. What's that? Your name got on. Your answer was no.
The jury is returned. Be seated, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Ron.
Your Honor, the state of Florida is going to call two members of the deceased family for victim impact. The first was Revis Sumner. Mr. Sumner?
I apologize. We're going to ask the board to read the instruction prior to their testimony.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Bear with, Can somebody give me a current copy of it?
We have an amendment.
I gave him my copy.
I have it. With the two paragraphs that we discussed last week. Okay. Members of the jury, I read this instruction to you early on. It's the matter of the question of the victim impact statement, but please let me tell you, this is actually what I will tell you the conclusion of this. You have heard evidence about the impact of this murder upon the family or friends or community of the decedents, plural. The evidence is presented to show the victim's uniqueness as an individual or individuals and the resultant loss by their deaths. However, you may not consider these as aggravating factors or aggravating evidence. You may not consider this evidence when you decide whether the aggravating factors are sufficient for the death penalty or when weighing the aggravating factors against the mitigating circumstances or when you make your final decision on the appropriate penalty. Somebody please come and take a stand. I understand Mr. Sumner has a statement that he's going to read.
As Your Honor, we're just on the record what his name is and what his relationship is to Carol and Reggie.
My name is Revis Sumner. I'm Reggie's brother.
Carol's brother-in-law.
And I'm Carol's brother-in-law, yes.
And you've prepared a written statement.
Yes, I have.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Sumner.
My name is Revis Sumner. I'm the brother of Reggie Sumner. I would like to tell you about my brother and his wife, Carol. Reggie and Carol were the most innocent, kind-hearted, and wonderful members of my family. They were good neighbors, they were kind, and they were trustworthy. They helped those that were in need, and they had the gift of hospitality. Reggie would give you the shirt off his back if you knew you needed it. They were givers. They were contributors to society. We were raised in a large family. Reggie was the life of the family. He was a party of our family reunions. He was always funny. Telling jokes and keeping people happy was his trademark. He would always insist on paying bills at a restaurant, and he had a habit of showing up at your door unannounced with goodies and cheers. He was a wonderful brother. Reggie had it rough growing up in a house of 11 brothers and sisters. He was the 7th child of the Sumner family. He was the baby. Our father was killed in a motorcycle accident when Reggie was just 6 weeks old. At 32, my mother was a widow with 7 children. She remarried and had 4 more children. Mr. Clark, our stepdad, passed away in 1953, and as the older brothers and sisters were moving out, getting married, or joining the military, Reggie stepped up to the plate and became the father-like figure and helped raise the younger siblings. He was such a good leader. He always set a wonderful example for everyone. He was so loved by his siblings. Reggie was retired from CSX Railroad, and although he and Carol were in poor health, they loved each other. They loved staying together. The void in our lives would never be filled. We missed them so much. They were supposed to celebrate anniversaries and birthdays with us instead. All were left were just our memories. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sumner.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sumner. You may stand down. Reverend Clark, if you'll.
Hey, how you doing? Okay. My name is Jean Clark, Reverend Jean Clark. I am Reggie's sister and Carol's sister-in-law. This, in fact, statement is a testimony of their lives, James Reginald Sumner and Carol Oxford Sumner. The positive thing about Reggie upon us was that he transformed our life, even as siblings and neighborhood young people. Also, Reggie and Carol impacted many communities, impacted upon their communities. The devastation, negative impact of the loss of Reggie and Carol upon his family, friends, and community. We grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, where we were raised by a wonderful, godly mother. My mother had 11 children, and when people would ask, well, actually, she had 12, but 11 living, who they were, all these children, she would always say they were cheaper by the dozen. My mother had very much humor. Many times when I would see like mother ducks or mother chickens, I would think of my mother. She nurtured all of us with love and raised us in an admonition of the Lord. She had many little ones and loved each and every one of us in a special way. My brother Reggie was number 7 out of 11 children. My mother would always say he was a Sumner baby. I was the Clark baby, and my little brother Oral was the Craven baby. Our mother instilled in us to give to others. During the holidays, my mother would have us go out and collect canned goods for the needy families. This impacted all of our lives as we were in need too and didn't even realize it. Reggie lost his dad when he was only 6 weeks old. That impacted his siblings during that time. His dad was killed on a motorcycle accident. Reggie was the meekest of all the 11 children that he grew up with. He was easygoing and never liked to fight or wanted to fight anyone. He was very gentle, tender, loving, humorous person. He cared very much about his younger siblings, Jan, my sister, me, and my younger brother, Oral. Reggie was like a father figure, and he was also known that way to the neighborhood children, neighborhood teenagers. If I can get my paper here. We've got to get it stuck together. Okay, here we go. He was like the neighborhood children the same way. Everyone loved Reggie, and he was meek, humble spirit. Reggie would load up his car and take us in many places he could on outings everywhere. He took us to the beach where we rode on his shoulders when the waves crashed against us. He took us to the drive-in theater to see good movies like The Ten Commandments. We would sit on the roof of the car and he would, or either the hood of the car, and he would buy us food to eat. He would take us like to this place called the Artificial Mountain, where we would climb up to the top and slide down on cardboard boxes. Reggie took us to Fort Moultrie, where we would explore the tunnels. We would be going through the tunnels sideways sometimes because it was so narrow. We walked on the sandy floor. There were openings at the bottom of some of the walls, and Reggie would disappear. And then suddenly he would reappear and grab our legs. We would scream, and oh, how we loved it, and would laugh. Reggie also took us to the Somerville Light, where back then was a scary place. A light would suddenly appear and disappear. We all thrived on these adventures, and they were so special in our lives. He also treated us by taking us to the fair. He bought our tickets on all kinds of rides and food, delicious food to eat. He did everything for us on our wonderful outings. He would also take us to the old rice mill, and where there was a pond and some would swim in it. Then all of a sudden, he or someone would yell gators, and everybody would run. We would run and scream, again, loving every moment of it. He would take us to the Battery in Charleston, and we would have a wonderful time during these excursions. It was a special place, and so was Hampton Park. We would go to these places many times, never, ever getting tired of seeing the same places. Reggie loved to help people. Let me go to these papers. He loved to help people and make their lives better. I was young and can't tell you all that he did for us, but he helped us make us who we are today. He taught me how to ride my first bicycle, and he rode me on a Cushman scooter. Reggie also had a car that he was going to sell and purchase to me, but unfortunately I had an accident. Reggie joined the Navy after graduating from high school in 1962. It was really hard on us siblings to see him go because we loved him so much, so dearly. I can remember when Reggie came home from being stationed in Japan, he seemed even funnier than ever. He was like a comedian. And when he saw the Christmas tree in the house, he said, in Japan, trees grow outside, not inside. He brought joy and peace in our lives and everywhere he went. As time went by, Reggie moved to Jacksonville and later bought me my first train ticket, and we rode together to Jacksonville. What a treat that was. I stayed a short time there and went to numerous places in Jacksonville. He bought my first flight on an airplane, on a plane back to Charleston. My siblings, my life, and the lives of others were enhanced through his life of my brother Reggie. Reggie and Carol dated in high school, and many years later, they connected and got married. They lived in Charleston, and by this time, we lived in Jacksonville. Carol was an easygoing person and a good cook. She kept Reggie well fed and enjoyed the good food and the good cook. She was the first time I visited them when they lived in Ladson, South Carolina. I spent a couple nights with them on that trip. There again, Reggie became the neighborhood big brother, dad, and friend. Reggie and Carol were only married a few years before they were taken from us. Reggie was faithful in supporting his church and also Save a Child Foundation. He reached out to people around the world in some way or another. His heart for mission, he had a heart for missions and went on 2 mission trips to Russia. He also went to other places. After becoming active in missions myself, he sponsored me in many missions around the world. Let's see, let's stick it together. He and I wanted to take a trip together, but it never was fulfilled due to his health. In 2006, Reggie and Carol were taken from us. I had the opportunity to stay in their house and upkeep the place. During this time, many neighbors came up to me and shared their heart-touching testimonies, describing the kindness and generosity of Reggie and Carol. One of the ladies that lived across the street shared how Reggie would bring encouragement to her during difficult times through his words. Others received money for food and whatever else they needed. If a person had a need, the need was no more, as Reggie would take care of it without any hesitation or obligation. The death of my brother and my sister-in-law, Carol, has been very devastating on all of our families, even through these many years have passed. There have been many times that we've consumed with grief and felt like we couldn't handle our loss. I must say the loss of my brother and sister-in-law took a very heavy toll on all of us. We have never been the same since our loved ones were taken from us, and sorrow continues through the years. Sleepless nights with horrible visions and dreams tormented all of us and still affect all of us. We will never be the same. As a minister, I could hardly maintain, but I felt like needed to be the strong one for everyone else. Many of us Many of us suffered loss in different ways through the sadness or horror that our loved ones gone through. Many days, months, years, and grief and torment has plagued our lives. Looking forward to that grand reunion when Reggie and Carol to see in heaven as we hold fast to God. Excuse me. I know my brother and my sister-in-law are gone and will never return. Where are they now? Can I see them? Can I call them on the phone? No, I cannot. Can I send them a birthday card to wish them happy birthday? Yes, I can. Only to have the card returned stamped. No such persons. Address is unknown. Return to sender. James Reginald Carroll Oxford Sumner, or both have been missed by more than just our families through the years. Their love for people, their humility, their generosity will be continued through the lives of those he touched now, but now is void in the communities and lives of others. The giving, quiet, peaceful, moral, kind, upright couple are not here to help those who are down and out anymore. Our family as well as the community has lost a valuable couple. To Reggie and Carol, I'd like to say thank you for all you've done, both done for helping mankind. To my brother Reggie, I would like to say thank you for all you did for me in my childhood and adolescent years. Thank you for loving me unconditionally. I still miss you and love you dearly, even though many years have gone by. You will always be the part of my heart. I still hold fast to the memories of your nurturing love in my heart and my memories. I hold fast until then, till we reunite in heaven. I want to thank you all for allowing me to share my heart with you. God bless you all.
Thank you, Reverend. Mr. Mizrahi.
Although the state reserves the right to call rebuttal witnesses as necessary, we have no further evidence at this time.
Mr. Johnson, I'm assuming that you would prefer to give your opening statement after a lunch break, or would you
I think we prefer to do it now.
prefer to proceed?
Ms.
And
Morris.
Ms. Morris, is that
Yes, Your Honor.
prepared to proceed now?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, fine.
I will need a moment to-
Certainly.
Thank you. May I please report?
Yes, ma'am.
Counsel. When Alan Wade was 12, he stopped going to school. Not because he wasn't enrolled, but because there was no one there to take him. His father, not involved in his life, and his mother had over an hour commute to work each morning and just wasn't always there. Rita, Alan's mother, had to make the difficult decision as to whether she was going to make it to work on time to be able to put food on the table for her children, or whether she was going to see to it that Alan actually made it to school each day. Alan's well-being and his education had to give. Alan repeated the 6th grade twice. He repeated the 7th grade. And when he was 13 years old, his mother, Frida, was diagnosed with breast cancer. At this point, Frida is working a full-time job. She's trying to care for Alan. She's trying to care for Alan's brother, Andrew, who is autistic. And now she's fighting for her life. Soon after, Alan begins 8th grade at Baker County Middle School, where he meets Assistant Principal Brian Dobson. Mr. Dobson sees Alan struggling and takes a special interest in him. Alan talks to him about how difficult it is for him not having his dad around. Alan confides in him how scared he is to lose his mom to cancer
and that he may be left alone. Mr. Dobson listens to him, but begins to become concerned when Alan says, "I don't think that my mom loves me." Mr. Dobson tries to reassure Alan and tell him, "Your mother, she does love you, but she is going through an awful lot right now." Mr. Dobson tries to reassure Alan because there is nothing more important in this world to a child than the love of their mother. But after the second time, and then the third time, that Alan mentions to him that he doesn't think that his mother loves him, Mr. Dobson decides that he's going to try to help. He's going to try to clear this up. So the very next time that Alan mentions to him, "I don't think my mom loves me," he invites Alan into his office. He sits Alan down and he picks up his phone and he dials Frida's number. He puts her on speakerphone so everyone can hear. Mr. Dobson explains to Alan's mom his concerns that he doesn't love her, and he says, "I think that he just needs to hear it from you. Can you let Alan know that you love him so we can clear this all up?" "I can't say that. I can't say that." Those are the words that 13-year-old Alan Wade heard coming from the other end of the line from the most important person in his life and the only parent that he had left. She couldn't tell him that she loved him. Now, members of the jury, this is one small story. This is one tiny fragment in the story that is Alan Wade's life. And over the next few days here in this courtroom, we're going to tell you the whole story. Because you are sentencing the man that sits in this courtroom here today, the whole man. I submit to you that not all of Alan's story will mean something or matter to each and every one of you. And that's okay. But I suspect that if you didn't learn of Alan's whole story, and you voted for death, you voted for Alan to die, and then later on, when we're gone out of this courtroom, if you heard parts of that story that you didn't hear today, maybe about his childhood trauma, maybe about his sexual abuse or his drug addiction, I suspect that you would say to yourself, "I wish that someone would have told me that." Now, I want to be clear. Mitigation is never offered as a justification, an excuse, or a defense to the crime of murder. There is no such thing as an excuse or a justification to murder. Mitigation is a reason to choose life or a reason not to choose death. Mitigation does not have to be unanimously proven, and it can be unique to each and every one of you, and that can include your own personal sense of mercy. Now, the facts of this crime are horrific. That is absolutely undeniable. And the testimony that we have heard in this courtroom over the past few days have been difficult for everyone to hear because we're all human. But I can assure you that no one, and I mean no one, in this courtroom will ever suggest to you that what happened to Reggie and Carol Sumner was anything less than a senseless tragedy that should not have happened. Nothing that anyone can say, unfortunately, can bring them back. And nothing that we, the defense, do or say during this trial is ever intended to disrespect their memories or their family in any way. Nothing can undo the past and the pain that this crime has put their family through and we acknowledge that. No matter what your verdict is after we're done here, everyone will understand the respect that you hold for Reggie and Carol Sumner and the deep empathy that you have for their family. Now, we, as a society and as our laws dictate, do not execute people based solely on the facts of the crime. If we did, then we wouldn't be here today. After Alan Wade was found guilty and convicted, he would have been immediately executed. Instead, the court's going to instruct you that you're going to hear both aggravation, the facts of the crime, and the mitigation, the reasons for life. Put more simply, the law requires you to consider not only Alan Wade's actions, what he did, but who 18-year-old Alan Wade was at the time of this crime. And members of the jury, you promised in jury selection that you would consider not only the circumstances surrounding the crime, but the circumstances surrounding what could have possibly happened in 18-year-old Alan Wade's life that could have led him to do this. So let's talk more about Alan's childhood and what you're going to hear over the next few days from us. Alan Wade is born May 22nd, 1987. At the age of 5, the family home that he was born into and spent the first 5 years in, it's foreclosed on, and the family is forced out of their suburban home at the end of a cul-de-sac into an apartment. Between the ages of 6 and 8 years old, Alan was molested or sexually assaulted by a babysitter, a family friend, and a member of their church. At the age of 8, Alan's mother abruptly leaves his father and moves the boys from the apartment in Daytona to a trailer in McClenny, Florida. Frida is now a single mother. She's working full-time, and she's trying to raise 2 boys, one of which is autistic. At the age of 12, Alan's father walks out of his life. That same year, Alan starts drinking alcohol and using marijuana. Alan struggles in school. There's no one there to take him or encourage him, for that matter. He repeats 6th grade twice and 7th grade once. At the age of 13, Alan's mother, Frida, is diagnosed with breast cancer. And Alan tells family members, who you'll hear from, that he's scared that she's going to die and that he will be left an orphan. Around this time, Alan begins using cocaine. Alan Wade's mother sent him to stay with his half-sister, Trish Page, in Connecticut during the summers when Alan was 11 and 12 and 13 years old because she, his mother, could not care for him. He does well during those summers with Trish because he has structure and he has stability. The day after Alan's 14th birthday, his mother has a mastectomy and then subsequently begins chemo and radiation treatment. Due to her cancer medications, she begins to have cognitive difficulties. She has trouble doing routine tasks like managing her bills. That same year, Alan attempts to commit suicide and is Baker acted. At the age of 15, Frida kicks Alan out of the house and he goes to live with a family friend named Teresa Roden, whose children he knows from school. He does well while he's at the Rodens' home because he has structure and stability. Teresa asked Frida for financial support for Alan to raise her child, and Frida refuses. A few days later, Frida picks Alan up from Teresa Roden's home and moves them to an apartment in Jacksonville. At the age of 16, Alan's mother's cancer progresses, and so do Alan's struggles. Alan's committed to Gateway Community Service for alcohol and drug dependence. At the age of 17, Alan Wade's mother would not allow Alan Wade to move into a new apartment that she was renting, leaving Alan homeless. This same year, he meets Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was 5 years older than Alan. He had already been to prison multiple times. And as Mr. Mizrahi said in his opening remarks, Michael Jackson was the brains of the operation in this crime. That is who Alan Wade meets at 17 years old. And while he's not living with Frida, she's still concerned. She reaches out to an Army National Guard recruiter and begs him to save Alan. This recruiter does what he can. He gathers paperwork. He sets up a physical for Alan. But unfortunately, Alan fails a drug test and is deemed ineligible for the armed forces. 47 days after Alan Wade's 18th birthday, this crime occurs. So why does all this matter? Well, it matters because every single one of these events that I just mentioned to you contributed to the person that Alan Wade was at the time that this crime occurred. Dr. Yenis Castillo is a clinical psychologist, and she's going to walk you through everything that I just mentioned and more regarding Alan's childhood trauma. She's going to talk to you about not only the physical, but the mental impacts of those adverse childhood experiences. Dr. Castillo will talk to you about the effects of sexual abuse. She will talk to you about the effects of parental abandonment and parental neglect. You will learn that in certain cases, parental or abandonment can be more damaging than actual physical abuse, because while the body may heal injuries within a reasonable amount of time, emotional wounds can last forever. The nation's foremost expert on juvenile brain development, Dr. Lawrence Steinberg, will tell you that the juvenile brain does not develop until closer to the age of 25. He's going to explain that as juveniles their forebrain is still developing when they're young, that they can be vulnerable to negative influences, and that their identities are not fully fixed. He's going to tell you that since their forebrain is still developing, which controls their impulsive decision-making and their judgment, that all of those things have an impact on decision-making at that age. However, Dr. Steinberg is also going to tell you that because the brain is still developing, that juveniles have a greater capacity for change and a greater capacity for reform as they get older and they continue to mature and grow. Dr. Scully Danziger is a forensic toxicologist. A forensic toxicologist is someone who studies the interactions between the human body and foreign substances, such as poison or drugs. She will talk to you about why some individuals use drugs to cope with pain and suffering. She's going to talk to you about how early drug use in adolescence can interfere with essential hormones needed for brain growth and development. Dr. Joette James is a clinical psychologist and a neuropsychologist. And she's going to tell you why all of those things that I just mentioned, early childhood trauma and adverse childhood experiences, drug use, juvenile brain development, she's going to talk to you about how all those things directly applied to Alan Wade in the weeks and months leading up to this crime. She's also going to talk to you about how the Alan Wade that sits in this courtroom here today is not the same Alan Wade that he was when he was 18 years old. Ron McAndrew is a former warden in the Florida Department of Corrections and an expert in the penal system. He's going to talk to you about Alan's time in custody, Alan's good behavior, and how Alan can meaningfully contribute inside the prison system. Now, you will be instructed that mitigation, it can come from anywhere. It can be from something that you hear from us during our defense presentation, during the mitigation. It can be something that you heard in the state's case, Mr. Mizrahi said or presented. It can come from something that you noticed. It can come from a simple reluctance to take human life. Members of the jury, you can give life for any reason, no reason, or mercy alone. You will have to make an individual moral assessment about whether you will take Alan Wade's life. The state of Florida never, ever requires a vote for death. Not in this case, not in any other case, not in the worst case than you can imagine. The state of Florida is always satisfied with a life verdict. And you're going to be instructed that for a death verdict to be returned, all 12 of you must determine that death is the appropriate penalty. If one of you thinks that life should be the verdict, then life is the verdict. 11 votes to 1 in favor of death is still a life verdict. And even if you don't particularly agree with the law, it is part of the laws that we all share, and you must respect them. And you must respect each other and each other's decisions. Because this is such a deeply personal moral decision, it requires 12 individual moral assessments about whether Alan Wade lives or dies. Regardless of what you think of Alan, it's your duty and your right and your responsibility to make sure that all 12 of your moral individual assessments are reflected on that verdict form. And while there's only one foreperson that's actually signing the form, that foreperson is simply saying that all 12 of your individual moral assessments are reflected on it. If you've made the decision that verdict should be life, you can let the foreperson know, write down my verdict. I'm done. I'm ready to go. The definition of deliberate means to carefully consider, not to debate. And you're going to be encouraged by the court to discuss the verdict amongst yourself at the end when it's time. But you also don't have to. Sometimes when it comes to these deeply personal decisions, these individual moral assessments, like whether you're going to have children, whether you're going to practice a religion, what religion? How are you going to raise those children? Those are just things, members of the jury, that you know in your gut, and they don't have to be explained. And no one is ever going to ask you to explain your verdict or justify your vote. Now, in the first part of this sentencing, we heard from the state and their aggravation, the facts of the crime. And now, in this second part of this hearing, you're listening to us. You're hearing from the defense regarding our mitigation, the character and the upbringing of Alan Wade. But that third part, the final part, your individual assessment, members of the jury, that's about you. What do you do? How do you feel in your heart, in your soul, in your mind? At 17 years old, what Alan Wade needed was a parent. And what he got was a master manipulator and a career criminal, Michael Jackson. That's what he got. And make no mistake about it, members of the jury, he will pay for it with the rest of his life. He will spend the rest of his days in a concrete cage, and he will be carried out of the Department of Corrections in a concrete box. He will leave in a casket. The only question that remains now is whether he dies of natural causes or whether it's of lethal injection. At the end of this trial, you're going to vote on whether a man, a human being, Alan Lindell Wade, whether he lives or whether he dies. And while some crimes do deserve the death penalty, some defendants do not. This is one decision that you will live with for the rest of your lives, and I'm going to suggest to you that you will never, ever regret choosing life. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morris. Is now appropriate, Ms. Morris, Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Honor, I anticipate Dr. Steinberg is going to be sent out.
All right, so I would assume she would be. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're at the point where it's appropriate to take a lunch break. Please remember my admonitions to you about not discussing the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else, not amongst yourselves until it's time to do so. Anyone else, never. Please be discreet about what you're doing at lunch. Please keep away from other people. You may leave your notes back in the back if you wish, or on your chair. It's just entirely up to you. In any event, I'm going to ask that you return at 20 minutes after 1 by the courtroom clock, which is right at an hour from now. All right, the jury is in recess. If staff and the participants will remain for a moment, please. All right, the jury has left the courtroom. I wanted to put on the record, you can go ahead, ladies and gentlemen. Note simply for record purposes that while after the jury had returned and we had begun, I received notification through the e-filing system that Mr. excuse me, that the defense had filed what I believe is the first written motion for Mr. Richardson regarding my disqualification. I have reviewed it. I'm not sure of the impact because I believe these are matters that we discussed on Thursday. That it was filed at 10 o'clock this morning according to the e-filing system, and I saw it about 10:15 or 10:30. In any event, I wanted to put that on the record. The motion is denied, but it is on the record. Right?
Your Honor, the only thing I would say is that's what I was trying to report. No reason, because the rule requires, preservation requires me to reduce it. You have full benefit.
Yeah, that's what I'm just not sure about the timing or anything. I will trust the counsel to make the appropriate arguments about that. It got into the system at 10 o'clock. I saw it 10:20, maybe, something like that. Okay. Like, I'm sorry. Oh, okay, that's fine, sure. No, that's fine. There's no reason to discuss that at this point because if you in fact establish these mitigators, it's going to be clear from the record in any event, so. That's fine. As I told you last week, I only need some guide because I know that in 3 days of testimony, I'm going to lose my place, frankly. So that does then bring to mind the question I still would like to know about verdict forms. Maybe today's not the day, but I do need to discuss that at some point with counsel. Mr. Mizrahi, anything further from the state?
No,
or Mr. Johnson? All right, we will be in recess until 1:20 by the courtroom.
Come out in the transcript. Oh, no, I meant something else. Nothing that we,
Oh,
nothing required of this. Okay. Because I was like, shit, it didn't.
silly me.
But if he didn't, I was just gonna suggest a stipulation.
I have no idea how to do, okay.